Chapter 547. President Xi had already thought of these plans in advance for this meeting. Wang Ming felt that this was in fact old Qi's usual style, which was to dupe. But in order to protect Beast King's remains this time, old Qi had actually set up a fake replica early on, which was enough to show how strong the protection this time was. And it was very clear that the ultimate goal of the 10 generals wasn't just to protect it, but to use practical action to issue a stern warning to those illegal forces who had designs on Beast King's remains. Then, according to procedure, if anyone has any objections to the summer camp plan and the protection plan that I just proposed, please press the oppose button in front of you, President Xi said as he looked around. According to Huaxiao Alliance's procedure, after each meeting, the 10 generals would vote on a plan before it would be submitted to the head of state for final approval. As long as more than half of the people in the meeting agreed, the plan would be passed. As wisdom saint, President Xi was an absolutely astute person. He had the experience of looking at the big picture, which even Wang Ming, who was known as the strongest brain, couldn't imitate. It was far from enough for a person to control the big picture by relying on IQ alone. What was needed was time and practical experience. Since the founding of Huaxiao Nation, there had been constant disturbances, and some evil dark forces had been extremely arrogant. At that time, Wang Ming hadn't been born yet, and it was old Qi who had personally made arrangements for these people. The might of wisdom saint wasn't undeserved. This was also the reason why Wang Ming was willing to stay by old Qi's side to learn. No one pressed the oppose button, and the proposal this time was still passed. Very good. Next, we'll wait for the head of state's final approval. Now, I will officially activate number 001 and have it dock with the head of state remotely. The number 001 that everyone is looking at now is still in standby mode. Wisdom Saint President Xi nodded in satisfaction. He then turned his gaze to number 001 next to him and said very affectionately, "I'm already infatuated with the old man at the door." His voice was extremely gentle, as if he was talking to his lover. What the hell? The 10 generals had goosebumps all over their bodies. The 10 generals were all founding ministers who had gone through thick and thin back then, and knew each other very well. But this was the first time they had seen President Xi act so affectionately. This was actually an activation password, and after saying this, President Xi's old face couldn't help turning red. Cough cough. This activation password was set by the head himself, and the password has been specially encrypted, so it can only be used to express emotions. The 10 generals, as soon as the activation password was given, head of state 001's lowered head slowly looked up. Immediately afterward, his pupils began to focus. In the activated mode, the 10 generals in the field could already hear the sound of number 001's breathing. To be honest, after this 001 was activated, it was exactly the same as the head of state. There was no difference at all. President Xi explained on the side, everyone can observe number 001's facial microexpressions. We've already achieved 100% synchronization. The head of state's facial expression can be perfectly synchronized with number 001's, including his movements, expression and tone of voice. Comrades. At this moment, head of state 001 crossed his fingers and supported his chin as he spoke slowly. Even his voice was exactly the same as Princeps. It's like a clone. The female holy doctor exclaimed. But in fact, number 001 is more powerful than a clone. President Xi said, as we all know, a clone is formed from magic energy, and will disappear once it is subjected to a violent frontal attack. But number 001 wouldn't. Moreover, number 001 could also cast his doppelganger. In fact, this is also in line with our cultivator's philosophy of, Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, three begets all things. The 10 generals in the room instantly sucked in breaths of cold air. What if **king, 3 begets all things? But if this humanoid magic treasure could really be mass-produced, that would really be too powerful. An itinerant immortal can at most summon 10,000 clones at a time. If we can produce 10 of these humanoid magic treasures, that would be an army. Marshal Jiang said repeatedly. Holy Doctor, better not. She was extremely afraid that she would develop a phobia of old men. At this stage, I haven't decided to mass-produce it for the time being. Number 001 is still in the experimental phase, the head of state suddenly said. The conference hall instantly fell silent. As a leader, even a short sentence was mixed with great majesty, and people couldn't help feeling solemn. Comrades, although number 001 was in standby mode just now, I was still able to remotely monitor the contents of the meeting. After the meeting, I will officially approve President Xi's recollection report. But before that, I need to add 2 more points. The head of state said, based on the clues I currently have, there is currently an overseas dark force called Night Chief, which we need you to pay attention to. I've only mentioned this to old Xi, and the relevant investigation is still ongoing. General Yi frowned. What kind of force is this? Because it's an overseas dark force, it's very difficult for us to capture them at the moment. Furthermore, we lack evidence, and we can't apply for an international heavenly Dao arrest warrant. But one thing we can be sure of is that this Night Chief currently has a minor leader on the run in our country. And this person, perhaps you have heard of him. This person is the leader of the Demon Hunters Association, Bai Zhe, who was exposed a while ago. Everyone was shocked. It's actually him, the head of state. This person is currently on the run, and at this stage, we've only caught a tree goblin who is willing to serve as a witness. According to what the tree goblin said, this person is very likely to be the culprit behind the massacre of holy beasts back then. Furthermore, based on all the current signs, this person will definitely make a move on Beast King's remains. Dark Saint's intelligence department will need to put in a lot of effort to bring this person to justice before Beast King's remains opens. No problem, Dark Saint Minister Ing said solemnly. The head of state, who was remotely controlling number 001, nodded. That's the first point I want to add. Now, I want to add the second point. This is also very important. And also very terrifying. Everyone sat upright and still. For some reason, they suddenly felt that the atmosphere had become even more serious than before. Number 001 crossed his fingers and rested his chin in his hands. Comrades, do you know Wang Situ? The 10 generals present? On the other side, Wang Ming, who had been eavesdropping on the meeting, was also startled. The head of state, this is an author I like very much, but just 20 minutes ago, he sent me a text message, General Yi. Could it be that this person has information on the president of the Demon Hunters Association? No. The head of state shook his head. He said that the monthly votes for his novel have been exceeded, and by a whole 600,000. How terrifying. General Yi instantly sucked in a cold breath. Then Your Excellency head of state means, the head of state, all of you, contact the person in charge of that website and vote for me. The 10 generals present, the head of state was very calm. Set a small goal first. For example, before 12:00 tonight, send 100 million votes. Chapter 548. On the other side, Wang Ming put down the monitoring earphones with a bewildered look on his face. He repeatedly confirmed that he hadn't heard wrong. Wang Situ, wasn't that his uncle's pen name? The head of state was actually his uncle's fan? This was so shocking that Wang Ming couldn't help sucking in a cold breath as his mind was already in a mess. At that moment, there were only 5 hours left before the end of the double monthly votes battle. Lai Mengmeng looked at the ranking list on his phone. The number 1 author, Braised Pork Shoulder, had already reached 1.6 million votes, while the number 2 author, Braised Pig Feet in Sauce, had 1.58 million votes. Neither side was giving in. Father Wang, on the other hand, had only just reached 800,000 votes after that superficial single chapter. Although it had increased by nearly 400,000, the gap between him and first and second place was getting wider and wider. However, Father Wang didn't seem worried at all as he calmly smoked a cigar and watched a TV series, not even bothering to watch the live vote count. In fact, Lai Mengmeng had his own understanding of the struggle for the monthly votes. In the beginning, it was a battle between authors. The quantity and quality of their updates often determined whether readers would enthusiastically vote for them. But in the middle and late stages, it basically didn't have much to do with the authors anymore. All that was left was a battle between nouveau riche readers. I just asked the chief's office and confirmed that braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in sauce weren't buying votes. Each of them has a sky-level sect backing them. Actually, when he said this, Lai Mengmeng already felt a sense of despair in his heart. What was the concept of a sky-level sect? Nowadays, a light sky-level sect's annual net profit was hundreds of millions. It wasn't strange at all for them to use a portion of their funds to give out red packets for monthly votes in order to support their favorite authors. Previously, Lai Mengmeng had thought that there was a problem with the votes of these two authors purely because he didn't know the situation. After all, at 6:00, the two of them already had nearly 1 million monthly votes. Now that they were giving out red packets for monthly votes, one monthly vote cost 5 immortal gold. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to afford such a large number of monthly votes. Oh, a sky-level sect, that's a little awesome. When Father Wang heard Lai Mengmeng's words, he couldn't help laughing. Lai Mengmeng almost vomited blood when he heard this. This wasn't just a little powerful, this was rather powerful. How many sky-level sects were there in the country that were certified by the government? No more than 50. To be able to rope in a sky-level sect as a backer was equivalent to having the backing of a financial group. While Lai Mengmeng and Father Wang were talking downstairs, Wang Ling had actually heard some news about the sky-level sects backing the two authors who were competing for votes. Wang Ling guessed that this news might have been fanned by the sky-level sects behind the scenes. In fact, in previous years, there had been many cases of sects and popular authors cooperating with each other. The popular authors would advertise for the sects in their books, and the sects would support the authors in the form of competing for monthly votes or giving them tips. This was due to the current market. Nowadays, there were a lot of cultivation novels on the internet, and the popular authors would often construct their own novel worldviews on the basis of modern cultivation. Therefore, some sect elders had long since set their eyes on this area of advertising business. Some sects would even find some novel authors to specially customize a cultivation novel, with their own sect as the background. But initially, it was mostly Earth-level sects who looked for authors to cooperate with, because Earth-level sects lacked students. But who knew when it had started? Sky-level sects had also started to stir things up. There was a lot of discussion in the class group. In fact, there were a lot of people in the class who were Father Wang's fans, but they were all students, after all. 5 immortal gold bars for a monthly vote, where would the students get the money from? Wang Ling felt that as students, it was already pretty good if they could subscribe to the official version. Using the name of the students to say that they didn't have the money to read pirated versions was never an excuse. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always been following Father Wang's books. So after seeing the news, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately started to express his support in the group. Everyone. Senior Wang's book, The Live-Streaming Life of the Immortal King, is now ranked 3rd in the monthly votes list. Can I ask everyone to mobilize their strength to help Senior Wang canvass for votes? Dharmaraja was the first to respond, and he immediately sent an OK gesture. No problem. I'll vote for Senior Wang right away. Salianjanran sent a fist salute gesture. I don't really read this kind of novel, but I still support Senior Wang. I'll contribute 100 monthly votes. Immortal Toya, but Senior Immortal, our strength alone isn't enough. The gap is a little big. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Everyone, vote first. I've already posted an event in my cultivation forum to cheer for Senior Wang like crazy. No matter what, we have to support Senior Wang. As he said this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal directly sent out a link to the event. Chapter 549. As the administrator of the cultivation forum, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rarely popped up, and would only go and deal with disputes between forum members. However, it was actually quite rare for him to make a serious post in support of someone. Wang Ling had in fact always felt that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's appeal couldn't be underestimated. As the famous, great death-courting senior, in the cultivation circle, this post almost immediately spread in the circle. In less than 10 minutes after the War of the Top post was posted, there were already nearly 1,000 replies. What the hell? Senior Immortal actually popped up. I didn't expect Senior Immortal to also follow this book. He's actually asking for monthly votes for Wang Situ. It looks like he's a true fan. Wah wah wah. I like Big Wang Situ. But Spirit Sword Sect is having an event. They say that if you give 20 monthly votes to braised pork shoulder, they'll give you a plate of chilled Wang Lu sashimi. Senior Immortal is a good friend. Fist salute, but I'm afraid Wang Situ is going to lose the monthly votes battle this time. The difference in votes is too big. Looking at these comments, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's heart was as clear as a mirror. There was actually a limit to what he could do with the forum's resources. At most, he could build momentum and give Father Wang more support. After all, there was a difference between the Cultivation Forum's audience and the Cultivation Chinese Network's audience for novels. It was almost impossible for a post to overtake Wang Situ in the number of votes. Because of the double monthly votes event, Father Wang's current vote gap was already close to 1 million. Generally speaking, the last day of the monthly votes battle or the last hour of the double monthly votes event was when Wang Situ's real power would be unleashed. However, whether it was Spirit Sword Sect, which supported braised pork shoulder, or Divine Dynasty Sect, which supported braised pig feet in sauce, these two great sky-level sects had yet to show their true strength. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the ranking list and couldn't help frowning. When all was said and done, this was the foundation of a sky-level sect. However, he was only running an online forum. Although he had made a lot of money over the years, he definitely wouldn't be able to go head-to-head with a sky-level sect. Nowadays, there were actually a lot of companies that used the internet economy to develop the real economy. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always had a bold idea. He also wanted to start a sect. However, this was not an easy matter. To really put it into practice, a lot of preparation had to be done. The construction of the sect, the sect's planning, the sect's philosophy, the school system, the business model, the enrollment brochure. All of these had to be thought through. However, based on the current development of the Cultivation Forum, even if the above problems could be solved, the final result of the sect's aptitude assessment would only be Earth tier at best. An Earth-level sect wasn't grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's goal. Since he was going to do it, he had to do it to the best of his abilities. Of course, this was all in the future. The most important thing now was to get votes for Senior Wang. Although sky-level sects had solid foundations, the Cultivation Forum's network influence wasn't low either. In fact, there was still a general who had not been mobilized yet. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was about to open the live streaming app to look for Daoist Guang, when the latter directly sent him a private message. Brother Lei. Senior Wang's novel is asking for votes now. I've already advertised it for him in the live stream room just now. Daoist Guang attached a screenshot of the live stream room. At the top of the room, Daoist Guang had pasted a link to Father Wang's novel in bold, and the number of viewers in Daoist Guang's live stream room was now fixed at more than 10 million. He had practically become the #1 entertainment live streamer in the live stream circle. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, thank you, Brother Guang, for your support. However, the problem facing the advertiser was the same as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Because the audience was different, there were very few people who could help Father Wang. After all, among these 10 million people, not everyone read novels, and not everyone was a nouveau riche. Most of Daoist Guang's fans were very young, and the #1 spot on the fan list was currently occupied by Father Wang's registered ID. Has 3 days and 2 sleeps been updated? Daoist Guang sighed and typed a reply. But Brother Lei, I don't think the effect is very good. I just heard from Water Friends that the other 2 authors' books are backed by sky-level sections. With just the 2 of us, I'm afraid we won't be able to go head-to-head with a sky-level sect. At that moment, Dharmaraja sent a message in the group. Senior Wang's votes are rising very quickly, and are now at 1.2 million. But the votes of the other 2 authors are already close to 2 million. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. A gap of 800,000 from beginning to end. How about we think of another way? Like buying votes? Absolutely not. Grenade-throwing senior immortal immediately shook his head and replied, since the votes of the other two authors weren't bought, but are backed by sky-level sects, if we help Senior Wang get votes like this and are later found out, I'm afraid we'll become a laughing stock. And most importantly, Senior Wang's reputation will also be affected. After grenade-throwing senior immortal said this, the group immediately fell silent. At that moment, 9x Man, who had been silent all this time, suddenly sent a fist salute emoji. Everyone, 9x Man will offer Senior Wang 500,000 monthly votes later. As soon as this message came out, the chat group instantly exploded. Immortal Toya? Grenade-throwing senior immortal? Silyanjanran? Lightning Dharmaraja, F***K, it turns out that 9x Man is an invisible nouveau riche. Wang Ling was silent because he knew 9x Man's true identity. This was the alternate account of General Yi, one of the 10 founding generals. Note, 9x Man's identity can be found in Chapter 231 of the novel, The Legendary Plan Master, and Chapter 420, 9x Man with an Acting Dream. Actually, when he saw this, Wang Ling already knew that Father Wang had most likely already spoken to his strongest fan. In the end, he was one of the 10 founding generals, 5 immortal gold bars for a monthly vote, so 500,000 monthly votes would be 2.5 million immortal gold bars. This was simply terrifying. At the same time, Lai Mengmeng was still anxiously waiting at the television door. Father Wang was watching a TV series, so he could only keep scrolling through the list on his phone. What was gratifying was that Father Wang's votes were still increasing. Although the gap was narrowing, it was clearly still far from enough. I'm going to the bathroom. Father Wang patted Lai Mengmeng on the shoulder. As soon as his butt left the sofa, Lai Mengmeng directly grabbed the TV remote control and wanted to switch the channel to the one where the monthly votes were being counted. But after switching a few channels, Lai Mengmeng felt that something wasn't quite right with the TV program. Cultivation Sports Channel. At the World Table Tennis Competition, a male athlete from the national table tennis team surnamed Ma was giving a speech after winning the championship. I want to thank my motherland. I want to thank my parents. I want to thank my coach. I want to thank my partners who persevered in training with me. I also want to thank teacher Wang Situ's The Live Streaming Life of the Immortal King for the happiness it brings me. Every time I feel like I can't hold on anymore, it's teacher Wang Situ's book that encourages me. Please help me cast your monthly votes, thank you. Lai Mengmeng? Bewildered, Lai Mengmeng changed the channel. Cultivation Food Channel. A chef was being interviewed by a female reporter on the street. Mr. Chuangjin, how do you find inspiration when you create all kinds of delicacies? This chef called Chuangjin smiled slightly at the camera and made a peace sign. Of course I watched the live streaming Life of the Immortal King. Teacher Wang Situ writes it so well. 666 Lai Mengmeng? He changed the channel again. Cultivation News Broadcast. The female anchor sat upright and still as she reported international news. Today, Minister Shi, the spokesperson for the Ministry of National Defense, says that he will accompany Mixiu Nation to the end for stirring up trouble for no reason. After saying this, the female anchor suddenly paused. Because at that moment, a document was suddenly handed to her from the side. Her good professionalism prevented her from panicking in the slightest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have urgent news. The female anchor looked down at the contents of the document, then quickly raised her head again. Please offer your monthly votes to author Wang Situ's The Live Streaming Life of the Immortal King. Thank you. Chapter 550. Lai Mengmeng rubbed his eyes repeatedly and picked his ears to confirm that he wasn't hallucinating or hearing things. That was right. He hadn't seen wrong. All the programs were now broadcasting the news of Father Wang begging for monthly votes. Whether it was sports athletes, domestic celebrity artists or big shots from all walks of life, they were all begging for votes on Father Wang's behalf on TV. Lai Mengmeng glanced at the trending topic list. Sure enough, this matter had already become a hot search, and it wasn't just one hot search. In a flash, the trending topics, XXX supports Wang Situ, and XXX begs for votes for Wang Situ, completely dominated the list. Lai Mengmeng glanced at the S group chat and found that all the S in the group were calm. This was a private S group that Lai Mengmeng had set up himself, and the S in the group were all on good terms with him. There were colleagues from other novel teams, his own leaders, and even some S from partner sites. Lai Mengmeng was a blooming social flower in Cultivation Chinese network, and he lived up to his name. Why isn't anyone reacting? It's such a big deal. Lai Mengmeng typed 3 exclamation marks in a row to express his astonishment. The chief of Cultivation Chinese network, whose ID was squad leader, looked at the screen with an indifferent expression. Little Song, you're still too young. But you're not Wang Situ's first, after all. If you had been in charge of his books from the beginning, you would probably have gotten used to it long ago. Teacher Wang Situ isn't an ordinary person. Captain, what do you mean? It's hard to say. It was very obvious that this chief knew something. Do you know why today, when braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in sauce overtook teacher Wang Situ in votes, the outside world was abuzz with different opinions, but our eel department didn't react at all? Lai Mengmeng was startled. Damn. So there really wasn't any reaction? I thought the eel department was disconnected from the internet. Chief, squad leader, let's not take this matter too seriously. In any case, you just need to remember that writers who want to compete with teacher Wang Situ for monthly votes are basically courting death. Actually, when the chief said this, Lai Mengmeng already seemed to understand a little, because in terms of the power of social interaction on TV and trending topics, Father Wang could indeed be called invincible. To be able to mobilize such large-scale support, just what kind of power was behind this? Lai Mengmeng's imagination had already begun to run wild. But the problem was that he hadn't seen Father Wang do anything. It seemed like he was simply sending a text message to one of his rich fans. Now, it seemed that the tycoon was obviously not an ordinary tycoon. It was very likely that he came from a force with a stronger background and heritage than a sky-level sect. Lai Mengmeng was very perceptive and immediately thanked him. Thank you, Captain. There were some things that could be seen through but not said out loud. It's just a small matter. In any case, just remember to be calm in the future. Also, if a reporter came looking for you to interview teacher Wang Situ or something, the website's uniform policy was to reject them all. Teacher Wang Situ didn't like it. I'll emphasize this in the meeting tomorrow. The squad leader nodded and said, in any case, remember, your task is to urge him to update at all costs and in all ways possible. This is your main task. You basically don't need to worry about the ranking competition. In any case, as long as teacher Wang Situ is still publishing, he'll always be number 1. Lai Mengmeng, okay, Captain. Saying this, the chief was blank for a moment before he suddenly said, you should know that guru author who competed with teacher Wang Situ back then, Zhu Gu, right? This teacher Zhu Gu was originally also from our website. Lai Mengmeng nodded weakly. I know. At that moment, the chief sent a facepalm emoji. Now you should know why teacher Wang Situ drove teacher Zhu Gu away back then, right? Lai Mengmeng, it was July 18th on Tuesday in the 13th week of the semester. Last night's War of the Tops, between Father Wang, Wang Situ, and Pork Shoulder and Pig Feet had ended with Father Wang's crushing victory by 12 o'clock. By the time the double monthly votes campaign had ended, Pork Shoulder and Pig Feet's monthly votes were both around 3 million. Only Father Wang stood at the forefront with 6 million monthly votes, leading the pack. In fact, Father Wang's votes last night had actually already exceeded 10 million, but the website had hidden the remaining 4 million votes, which Father Wang had agreed to. After all, they were all from the same website, and he had to leave some face for his peers. The fallout from this incident wasn't small. On his way to school in the morning, Wang Ling heard people around him talking about it. After all, there had been so many celebrities supporting him last night. Yesterday's topic had been the support of various celebrities, and today's topic was, who the hell is Wang Situ? As soon as Wang Ling entered class in the morning, He heard Dopigwa making all sorts of noises as he recounted the fierce battle in the War of the Tops last night. The students in class weren't just onlookers. In fact, most of them were actually Father Wang's fans. In some sense, Wang Ling felt that his old man was also invincible in another way. Dopigwa slapped his thigh as he sighed. Wang Situ is really too strong. That wave last night, TSK TSK TSK, the only thing missing was His Excellency the head of state support. Wang Ling, someone was suddenly a little curious. But then again, who on earth is Wang Situ himself? It's said that apart from the website's, no one has ever seen Wang Situ in person. Also, this guru Wang Situ never appears on screen or participates in events. He does have a Weibo, but he rarely posts anything, and the website manages it for him. Dopey, have you found anything? Little Peanut asked. At the same time, everyone in class couldn't help turning to look at Dopigwa. Last time, I was kind enough to hear you say that you have an uncle who works at the National Film Academy. What does the National Film Academy have to do with this? Is the director going on stage? The National Film Academy, for short, the National Telecommunications and Network Security Administration. Super Chen's lips twitched as he answered. Last night, I did have an uncle who looked into Wang Situ's identity. At the mention of this, Dopigwa sighed and was a little gloomy. But before he could find anything, he was punished by the leader. He was suspended from work for a week, and is now doing a self-reflection at home. Everyone trembled at these words, and they inexplicably felt the power of society. It was amazing that there was actually something in this world that Dopigwa didn't know. At that moment, Super Chen said jokingly, actually, I've been wondering, could this Wang Situ be Wang Ling's dad? Ha 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 ha. Even their surnames are the same. Chapter 551. Number 60 High School's midterm exams had already ended in the morning, and Wang Ling was very satisfied with his steady performance. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be able to rank 7th or 8th in class. As for whether it was 7th or 8th, that would be up to fate. There were only 15 people in class in total, so 7th or 8th actually didn't make a difference. Sometimes, he even felt that he was pretty Buddhist-like. That afternoon, Number 60 High School happened to welcome its first school activity after the tense midterm exams, the district sports meet. The sports meet this time wasn't as troublesome as the previous spiritual sword exchange meet. The military training exercise for the 6 schools was a rare large-scale activity. The district sports meet adopted a system where the judges would go to school. Except for the Battle of Soul Pets, which was an entertainment event, the other events would be scored by the professional referees invited by the General Administration of 100 Schools, of the Municipal Education Bureau. Then, it would be directly published on the scoreboard on the internet. All the competition points were open and transparent, and even the results and rankings could be checked immediately. Therefore, there was no need to travel back and forth for the district league tournament this time. The students were all in their own schools. The only battle of soul pets would be held in the Spirit Beast Appraisal Center, in the city, which Lupi Toad and Wei Ji had been to before. During the competition, the Spirit Beast Appraisal Center had a specialized dojo for spirit beasts to duel. The event he needed to participate in this afternoon was a relay run with Fang Xing and the others. There were a total of 10 people participating in the 10,000-meter relay race, with each person running a kilometer. At 1:30 in the afternoon, a lot of people had gathered on Number 60 High's sports field. Students from all classes had come to the sports field and sat down on the ground, drawing a circle around their classes outside the track. Wang Ling noticed that the referees sent by the Municipal Public Security Bureau were already in place. Including Audiobook, there were 4 people in total. It was said that 3 of them were referees and 1 was in charge of arbitration. Audiobook was in charge of arbitration. At that moment, the 3 referees were talking to Old Antique in the distance. Old Antique was now very useful. Because he was good with words, not only was he now a history teacher, but Number 60 High's diplomatic activities basically involved him. How did people communicate with each other? Brag. Who could boast better than Old Antique? The history teacher's head was full of illusions. According to the schedule, Headmaster Chen was about to announce the speech before the start of the sports meet. However, there were still some classes that weren't in position yet. The students who were already in position on the sports field were whispering to each other, making the whole scene seem a little noisy. Look! Senior Joie. Senior Odd Joie is getting more and more handsome. I feel like you've matured a lot since the last time I saw you. When Odd Joie appeared, Wang Ling heard a lot of boys and girls cheering. Previously, Odd Joie's image had just been that of a legendary senior who had killed a demon king. But after experiencing several major incidents in succession and arresting several major criminals, Odd Joie's image in the hearts of many number 60 high students had instantly grown tens of thousands of times. I heard that the last time the Demon Hunters Association was destroyed, it was Senior Odd Joie who received a tip-off and personally took the lead to catch the culprit. Thanks to Senior Odd Joie, the branches of the Demon Hunters Association have been suppressed everywhere, and countless spirit beasts have been rescued. This is truly a great deed of virtue. But it's a pity that the boss behind the Demon Hunters Association hasn't been caught yet. Also, did you notice? First it was those Shadow Stream killers, then the Master of Shadow Stream Jiang Luiyue, then the Old Devil, the Master of Immortal Mansion, and then Evil Sword God. Senior Joie was the one who caught all of them. Senior Joie must have a high IQ. Why do you think so? Think about it, with his cultivation at the peak late Golden Core stage, how could Senior Odd Joie have survived until now? Speaking up to this point, this crazy boy suddenly stood up and shouted loudly, Senior Odd Joie. The boy suddenly stood up and shouted loudly, Senior Joie. I've always called you. My brain, my heart. Every organ in my body is saying, I call you. Senior Odd Joie, are you in an online relationship? Every organ in my body is saying, I call you. Senior Odd Joie, are you in an online relationship? Everyone was horrified at this scene, and Wang Ling sighed. What kind of courage was that in broad daylight, under the clear sky of heaven and earth? Then, this boy was pulled away by the teacher in charge for a lecture. Super Chen and Dopey Gua, who were sitting next to Wang Ling, were also stupefied by this scene. Super Chen, who is this person? Dopey Gua answered in a low voice, I'm looking for someone, Hu Su, a senior in high school. He's in the same class as Senior Yu. Apparently, he held back for 4 years. During the Shuego sect incident a while ago, Hu Su's mom even dissed Teacher Yi. Note, for a previous story, see chapter 356 of the novel, Parents and Teachers, Super Chen was startled. What a freak, why didn't the school expel this person? Dopey Gua shrugged. Because his grades are up, and they're improving by leaps and bounds. Super Chen was blank. How did his grades suddenly improve? Speaking up to this point, Dopey Gua couldn't help looking at Odd Joie in front of him. This is the power of a role model. A good poor student, turned gay just like that, Super Chen sighed. Actually, I feel that Senior Odd Joie might not be as heaven-defying as we think. Maybe he's just lucky, or maybe he's just a scapegoat. I've always thought this. But I feel that it's unrealistic for someone to be so accurate every time he picks up a scapegoat. Wang Ling, 5 minutes later, the noisy sports field fell silent once more. Standing in the leader's seat, Headmaster Chen raised a microphone. Students, let me say a few words. Then, half an hour passed. Throughout the entire process, Odd Joie stood behind Headmaster Chen with his hands clasped behind his back and a smile on his face, looking very modest. Super Chen and Dopey Gua noticed that Odd Joie's gaze was fixed on one spot the whole time, as if it was their position, and his eyes kept darting around. Super Chen asked Dopey Gua in a very low voice, what is Senior Joie looking at? Dopey Gua, of course he's looking at girls. There are indeed a lot of pretty girls in grade 1 this year. Super Chen shook his head. Senior Joie isn't that kind of person, he wouldn't lay a hand on a junior sister from his alma mater. I think there's something wrong with the look in his eyes. He looks very modest and respectful, as if his Shifu is here. Wang Ling, Dopey Gua, although Headmaster Chen didn't teach Senior Joie, he was also senior Joie's leader at number 60 high school, so I think it's pretty normal. Senior Joie is now one rank higher, but he still maintains this kind of humble and pure heart. It really isn't easy. Super Chen narrowed his eyes. He felt that Headmaster Chen might not be the most important part of this respect. Super Chen could only reluctantly accept Dopigua's reason. Senior Joie seems to be looking at us all the time, that look in his eyes. If I didn't know better, I would think his Shifu was sitting between the three of us. Chapter 552. Wang Ling felt that Super Chen seemed to have awakened some strange attribute. This intuition was simply a little frighteningly accurate. At 2:20, the much-anticipated men's 10,000 meters relay officially began. Because number 60 high school sports field was limited, there was only 400 meters, and each person had to run 2.5 laps in the 10-person relay on a sword. The spirit sword used in the competition was provided by the referees. It was a black steel sword, which was very wide and pitch black. It looked very heavy, and was actually quite difficult to control. This black steel sword was equivalent to a relay baton in an ordinary relay race. The rules of the relay race were to control the spirit sword to float above one's head, and then control the sword to run the relay race at the same time. It was an exercise in the skill of being one with one's mind and eye, and one had to be highly focused. If one was the slightest bit distracted during the run, the spirit sword above one's head might fall, and it would take time to control it to float again. Thus, concentration was very important in this 10,000 meters relay race, and teamwork was equally important. The person receiving the baton had to calculate the time accurately. While receiving the baton, he had to inject his spirit force into the black steel sword above the previous person's head. This way, the black steel sword would always be suspended in the air. This was the best way to save time. Wang Ling and Super Chen were the only contestants in Grade 1, Class 3, while Lotus Sun and Feather Lin would compete in the women's 10,000 meters relay race. In order to cultivate a tacit understanding of the 10-person relay race, Wang Ling had practiced it a lot in PE class at school. Except for Fang Xing and Jiang Bai from Class 2, he actually wasn't familiar with the other students in the other classes. However, Jiang Bai wasn't participating this time. For ordinary foundation establishment students, the 10,000-meter relay was a physically and spiritually exhausting activity. Jiang Bai had to deal with the archery event the next day, so Teacher Yi had to ensure that Jiang Bai's spiritual power and stamina were at their peak. This was directly related to the problem of concentration. During the 10,000 meters relay race, Fang Xing had run 4,000 meters on a sword in PE class in 1 minute and 30 seconds, which was an average speed of 44 meters per second. This was actually the highest speed a peak late foundation establishment cultivator could run at full speed. Without activating the White Knight spell and immortal mode, Fang Xing's true strength was that of an itinerant immortal, so controlling his speed was a piece of cake for him. Sometimes, Wang Ling actually envied Fang Xing quite a bit because he could control his own strength. But that was also because he didn't have primordial qi in his body, otherwise his situation wouldn't be much better than Wang Ling's. So after a few practice sessions, he calculated his running speed a little. Wang Ling didn't want to stand out too much. Taking into account the overall fighting strength of the participants in the men's 10-man relay event, it was most appropriate for him to keep his running speed to around 20 meters per second. Now it was time to assemble the contestants. Teacher Yi waved a small flag at the side of the track. "Let's go, Wang Ling." Super Chen immediately patted him on the shoulder. Then, the two of them stood up and walked in the direction of Teacher Yi. Wang Ling and Super Chen took off their jackets. Number 60 High's school uniform was the only one throughout the year, and it was warm in winter and cool in summer. Underneath it was a short-sleeved sports shirt, paired with a jacket and pants with the word "Elite" printed on it for the elite class. The uniform was made of spirit silk cotton, and fit very well, so that it wouldn't be too cold in winter or too hot in summer. However, it had already been decades since number 60 High's school uniform had been revised. Previously, Wang Ling had heard that in the second year of high school, the school would customize a new set of uniforms for all 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. It was said that Huagua Water Curtain Group's construction funds had already been approved. When the time came, it wouldn't just be a new uniform, it was possible that the whole of number 60 high would be refurbished this summer. The teaching building would be renovated, and even the sports field would be expanded. But of all the renovations, it was said that Headmaster Chen had decided to keep two things as they were. One was the old stone carvings at number 60 high's gate, which had been there since the school's founding. The other was the spirit palm trees, which the students jokingly called strong trees, which were planted next to the teaching building, but which were still rooted here despite being in their twilight years. When the 10 contestants went on stage, Wang Ling noticed that a lot of people were staring at him. Of course, among all the complicated gazes, Audiobook was the most blazing. "Shifu, you can do it." Audiobook did his best to restrain his emotions as he stared at Wang Ling and shouted continuously in his heart. He knew that Wang Ling could read minds, so he could definitely hear him. Wang Ling, at the same time, some girls discussed in low voices. "Who's this guy?" "I don't know. I think he's from grade 1, class 3. Wow, I've been at school for so long, why haven't I seen this guy before? Does he really have no presence?" At that moment, Jiang Bai, who was sitting next to the girls, raised his head silently. Senior Zhua borrowed his spirit sword at the last spirit sword exchange meet. "Oh, so it's him." The girls were instantly enlightened, and they looked a little embarrassed. It wasn't that they hadn't seen him before, but that they had selectively forgotten about him. Jiang Bai hugged his legs as he sat on the ground and muttered in a low voice, "Classmate Wang Ling, he's so awesome." "I don't see how he's so awesome, his presence is so weak, his grades must be average," said one of the girls. "Also, he looks average and isn't handsome. If he was a really handsome guy, I would remember him at first glance." Audiobook heard everything this girl said. On the rostrum, he turned his head slightly with a smile and asked Headmaster Chen, "Teacher Chen, that girl over there, which class is she from?" He had always called Headmaster Chen Teacher Chen. Headmaster Chen took a look and immediately replied, "Oh, regular class 2, the class of Jiang Bai's son, the head of Kitchen Knife Sect." "I see," Audiobook smiled again. "Classmate Jiang Bai has a competition tomorrow, so you can skip today's homework. As for the others, add one more, oh, no, 2 more test papers. I borrowed these test papers from Secretary Dakong, you can't buy them on the market." Headmaster Chen's eyes instantly lit up. "Good. I'll explain it to their teacher in charge later." But Headmaster Chen was also a little puzzled. "Then the other classes, do the same for the other classes." Audiobook said mysteriously, "This is a trial run, and it's confidential." Headmaster Chen looked as if he had suddenly understood. On the other side of the competition field, Super Chen silently pulled up his trouser legs to reveal his strong calf muscles. This was obviously the standard equipment for a sports talent student. Super Chen's speed definitely wasn't as fast as Fang Xing's because of the limitations of their realms. However, Super Chen's family cultivated ancient martial arts, and he was also a martial artist. For the late foundation establishment stage, his speed really wasn't considered slow. At full speed, he could reach more than 30 meters per second. Wang Ling initially thought that Super Chen was just pulling up his trouser legs to show off his calf muscles, but in the end, he realized that after Super Chen was done, Fang Xing had also started to crouch down and pull up his trouser legs. Unlike Super Chen's muscular calves, Fang Xing's calves were long and slender, and had the proportions of a model. On the rostrum, Audiobook yelled in his heart again, "Super Chen! Super Chen!" After Super Chen, Fang Xing. Fang Xing. After Fang Xing. After Fang Xing, Shifu. Wang Ling looked around suspiciously, and then noticed that the boys participating in the competition had all started to crouch down and pull up their trouser legs. Because the bottom of our school pants is a little fat, it's better to blow up our trouser legs when we're doing high-intensity exercises. These straps will protect your muscles. As he explained, Teacher Yi handed out the straps and glanced at Wang Ling. "Classmate Wang Ling, don't just stand there, hurry up and pull up your trouser legs." Chapter 553. Wang Ling's calves were different from Super Chen's and Fang Xing's. They weren't as slender or muscular, and the first impression they gave was that they were clean and well-proportioned. He rolled up his trouser legs and then tied them up like the other boys. At that moment, Teacher Yi looked at Wang Ling and observed his muscles. During the test run earlier, Wang Ling had been able to easily jog on the spirit sword without a blush or gasping for breath. This was clearly the result of his regular cultivation and exercise. Apart from PE classes, Teacher Yi had also worked as a fitness coach. He felt that given Wang Ling's physical ability, he should at least have distinct muscles, instead of looking like he didn't have any at all. Student Wang Ling is a little thin. Teacher Yi couldn't help frowning. Next to him, a boy whose muscles were even more exaggerated than Super Chen's couldn't help laughing. Is this bro okay? He didn't feel like he was running very fast during the test, he's so thin. He's like a boiled chicken. Wang Ling didn't say anything. He pretended he hadn't heard anything and simply ignored him. This person's muscles were pretty impressive, and he must have been very fierce when he worked out. But in fact, these muscles didn't mean much in actual combat. Having more muscles wasn't necessarily better. Excessive muscle training was very likely to cause them to block meridians and slow down the flow of spirit energy. Hence, it was more about muscle quality than quantity. Furthermore, it wasn't that Wang Ling didn't have muscles, it was just that they were hidden away. Are you mocking our class? Super Chen looked at this person. This was Shi Shuai from Elite Class 2, who was in the same class as Fang Xing. Furthermore, he was famous for being a contrarian. He really liked to bicker with people. That's right, I'm mocking him. I think I can run faster than this boiled chicken classmate. Shi Shuai chuckled. You want to fight? Super Chen wasn't convinced, he had long since disliked this Shi Shuai. Teacher Yi was also startled. How could they start quarreling in the middle of the relay race? Shi Shuai rolled up his sleeves. I, Shi Shuai, am not scared. When the 10 of us pass the baton, the total time is counted, but we can see the results of each person's relay. I'll definitely run faster than him. Shi Shuai pointed at Wang Ling. Look at this bro, he's so thin. One look and you can tell he's malnourished. The result of eating cheap snacks every day, like those, are seriously unhealthy. On the rostrum, Old Antique suddenly felt a little stabbed in the heart. What was wrong with spicy strips? Did the spicy strips provoke you? A regular limited edition spicy strip was also very expensive. Be careful. On the side, Fang Xing's expression instantly turned cold. Shi Shuai couldn't help but mutter, let's see who will make a fool of themselves in the end. Wang Ling still didn't say anything, but the expression on his face was clearly a lot gloomier than before. He glanced at Shi Shuai. At that moment, silence spoke louder than words. Although Wang Ling hadn't said a word, everyone's spines involuntarily twitched as they quivered. There is a kind of cold feeling. It was as if someone was glaring at him with murderous intent. From the rostrum, Audiobook had seen it very clearly. It was as if the whole school had been hit by a ghost. Headmaster Chen looked at the sky and couldn't help but rub his hands. What kind of weather is this? Why did the temperature drop so suddenly? Holy shit, what was going on? He was clearly a white-cut chicken that looked so weak that it could not even withstand a gust of wind. Why did that glance give him goosebumps? Shi Shuai couldn't figure it out no matter how he thought about it. Fang Xing didn't say a word, and just sighed with a faint smile as he patted classmate Shi Shuai on the shoulder. You're on your own. Shi Shuai was baffled by this reminder. Only Fang Xing and Audiobook knew that from the moment this classmate Shi Shuai had dissed crispy noodle snacks, he was already dead. Everyone stood on the track as the 10,000-meter relay officially began, and Shi Shuai happened to be the first runner. As he spoke, the referee raised his starting pistol. Everyone, take your places. Shi Shuai had already taken control of the heavy black steel sword, allowing it to float above his head. This sword was a lot heavier than the spirit swords he usually used for practice, and Shi Shuai couldn't help gritting his teeth. F***K. But now that things had come to this, he already had no way out. Since he had boasted just now, no matter what, he had to give it his all. At the very least, he couldn't lose to that white-cut chicken just now. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The robust student sure took a big stride forward like an arrow and dashed forward like a flying arrow. The black steel sword hovered steadily above his head and sprinted along with him. But it was very clear that because the black steel sword was too heavy, Shui's speed wasn't up to his expectations. With just half a lap to go, he was already drenched in sweat. Shui's previous top speed had been 33 meters per minute, and he had run 1 kilometer in a little over 30 seconds. Very quickly, Shui handed over the baton. Super Chen was the second runner. After that, he rushed out on his sword at the speed of light, while Shui couldn't help panting with his hands on his knees. He raised his head and looked at the results on the electronic panel next to him. 50 seconds, how could this be right? It had to be that the black steel sword was too heavy. Since he only had 50 seconds, then the others definitely didn't have good results. Especially that white-cut chicken. Shui glared at him fiercely. He completely ignored him. Very quickly, Super Chen came back with his sword and handed over the third runner to a boy from class 2. Unlike Shui, Super Chen felt that this black steel sword wasn't as heavy as he had imagined. When he took over the baton, he didn't even break a sweat. At that moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the electronic panel. After the referee confirmed it, Super Chen's result was directly announced. 29 seconds. What the hell? How did he do it in 29 seconds? What the hell? How did I do it in 29 seconds? Super Chen and Shui were both stupefied. Extraordinary performance, Super Chen. Teacher Yi was overjoyed and patted Super Chen on the shoulder like crazy. He couldn't help hugging him. Only Fang Xing stood silently on the side and smiled as if he had seen through everything. Classmate Wang Ling, can you help me out later? Wang Ling, Fang Xing knew that it had to be Wang Ling who had done something. That was why Super Chen had been able to finish the race so easily. Otherwise, no matter how extraordinary Super Chen's performance was, there was no way he could have run in such a heaven-defying time of 29 seconds. It was really too easy for Wang Ling to pull off a minor trick in a competition of this level. Fang Xing was the fourth runner, and he was standing in front of Wang Ling, who was in charge of the fifth. The third runner was actually average, and Shui was sure that no matter how bad he was, he would definitely be a lot faster than this person. When the third runner handed over the baton, all the teachers and students in the school almost subconsciously turned to the electronic panel in the field. The referee announced the result. 35 seconds. Everyone cried out in surprise. Shui. It was very obvious that Wang Ling had also cast a minor spell on this boy to lighten his body. However, the 50 seconds Shui had run just now were in fact Shui's true result. Wang Ling hadn't done anything to it. After all, the school's honor was at stake in the sports meet's results, and Wang Ling felt that it wasn't worth it to deliberately cast a negative spell to trip Shui up. At worst, he wouldn't help him. Wang Ling understood that as long as he helped other people improve their results, in the end, Shui would still be the one making a fool of himself, if he didn't teach this kind of contrarian a lesson. Chapter 554. In that instant, Shui suddenly regretted it a little. He had boasted before the start of the relay race, but never in his wildest dreams had he thought that there would actually be 3 people with better times than him in a row. Furthermore, they were more than 10 seconds ahead of him. How could this be? Shui felt hurt, as if his confidence had suffered a blow. But before Shui could finish lamenting, Fang Xing ran back like a bolt of lightning and smoothly handed over the baton to Shui. Shui was completely stunned as he stared blankly at Fang Xing. Didn't you just receive the baton? That was too fast. Hands on his waist, Fang Xing smiled at him. That's right, it's already over. Shui, on the other side, the referee announced the results. Fang Xing, 25 seconds. Shui almost spat blood. Fang Xing's time was double his. Even with such a heavy black steel sword, Fang Xing could actually run at a speed of 40 meters per second. Was he even human? Looking at the results, Super Chen couldn't help sighing in his heart at Fang Xing's prowess. To be honest, he had actually been a little disgusted with Fang Xing in the beginning. He felt that this person was like the sun wherever he went, and had a completely opposite personality from Wang Ling, which was especially eye-catching. At the very beginning, Super Chen admitted that he had been a little jealous. But after straightening out his attitude, Super Chen summed up Fang Xing as, "You can't give up on this person." Sometimes, when you really couldn't beat someone, you had to admit it, and then make up your mind to work hard. There was no point in being jealous and making sour remarks. Ever since he had taken Fang Xing seriously, Super Chen's attitude toward him had been pure envy. This person's skin was as good as a girl's, his figure was like a male model's, he was good at studying and sports, too rare. He was simply a perfect combination of the strengths of both sexes. This student Fang Xing is a new transfer student, but his performance has always been very good. On the rostrum, Headmaster Chen was full of praise for Fang Xing. He's pretty awesome. Audiobook nodded symbolically, so he wasn't as excited as Headmaster Chen at Fang Xing's outstanding performance. Instead, he just stared intently at Wang Ling, who was sprinting on the track. This was the first time he had seen his Shifu run. It was really too cool. As he ran, his bangs parted to reveal Wang Ling's smooth little face, which made Audiobook extremely excited. Shifu was so handsome. In the end, Wang Ling's fifth leg time was 32 seconds. Of course, he had deliberately controlled this score. It wasn't too high, but it wasn't too low either. Most importantly, this result was enough to slap the face of Shi Shuai, who had boasted before. When the results were announced, Wang Ling didn't say a word, and only lifted his sweatshirt to wipe the sweat off his face. Audio's breathing grew heavier when he saw this, and he couldn't help secretly giving him a thumbs up, as expected of Shifu. These abdominal muscles were awesome. In fact, even with the help of the Tao Talisman, restraining the primordial qi was physically taxing for him, and it wasn't easy to restrain it. When he exercised intensely in particular, the primordial qi's concentration would rise, and Wang Ling would need to actively circulate an equal amount of spirit energy to suppress and neutralize it. It was like a taut nerve that couldn't be relaxed at all. When he had received Fang Xing's blow just now, he had been afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on and release the primordial qi. Otherwise, how could a kilometer take 33 seconds? It was just a blink of an eye. Controlling the score was really too difficult. Sighing in his heart, Wang Ling silently walked over to the pile of coats on the lawn, picked them up, and put them on. Suddenly, he noticed that the gazes of the people around him seemed a little off. Why were they all staring at him? When he pulled up the zipper of his coat, Super Chen and Fang Xing came over. Super Chen couldn't help praising him. "Not bad, Wang Ling, you're not a completely white-cut chicken." "Wang Ling?" Fang Xing smiled slightly. "What he means is that your abs aren't bad." Super Chen spoke very loudly, and the nickname, white-cut chicken, made Wang Ling subconsciously turn his head to look at Shi Shuai. Classmate Shi Shuai was already covering his face in shame. Furthermore, Wang Ling noticed that although Shi Shuai was covering his face with his hands, his gaze was still sneaking out between his fingers to quietly size him up. Shi Shuai was now very regretful. For some reason, he felt that this white-cut chicken classmate who had inadvertently shown off his abs just now was actually a little handsome. Should he go and apologize to her? Shi Shuai was conflicted in his heart. In the end, the total time taken for number 60 High's 10-person relay race was 5 minutes and 43 seconds, for a total of 343 seconds. In the eyes of the 3 referees who were present, this result was already pretty heaven-defying. They had been to Prime Elevation High School and Reliance High School before, both of which were key city high schools, but the best time so far was 6 minutes and 10 seconds, which was only 370 seconds. Number 60 High, was it really just an ordinary high school? The 3 referees stared blankly at the results. Prime Elevation High School and Reliance High School were both key city high schools. The training venues of key city high schools were much more luxurious than the current number 60 high school, and the quality of the students was clearly better. However, the three referees had to admit that the grade 1 students of number 60 high school this time were indeed a little amazing. Congratulations, Teacher Yi. Your results are really outstanding this time. One by one, the three referees congratulated Teacher Yi, who was in charge of all the events this time. We were just lucky. Teacher Yi was grinning from ear to ear. However, are our results really that good? The corners of the three referees' mouths twitched in unison, a result of 343 seconds. They were already F*** King qualified for the city team. And this was just a group of grade 1 students. What would happen when they were grade 3 students? We've already tested at Prime Elevation High School and Reliance High School, and the results of these two key city high schools are currently lower than number 60 high schools. Tomorrow, we'll test at Building Materials High School, God Vision High School and number 59 High School. All in all, number 60 high school has a very good chance of winning this event this time. One of the experienced referees analyzed. The first was number 60 high's neighbor, number 59 high school. The headmasters of the two schools were from the same school, and both schools were currently on the waiting list for the key high schools in the city. However, judging from the quality of this year's students, the chances of number 59 high school students surpassing number 60 high school and their test scores were actually quite slim. On the other hand, Building Materials High School was a private high school for nobles, which had been invested in by Lin Sikong, the father of Lin Xiaozong, a famous second-generation rich kid in the cultivation circle. God Vision High School was a private high school built by the Xiao clan. The overall strength of the two schools was about the same. However, looking at the results of previous district sports meets, these two schools still couldn't compare with Prime Elevation High School and Reliance High School, which was run by Patriarch Reliance, the sect leader of Reliance sect, so, number 60 high school had a very good chance of winning this time. At the school gate, Headmaster Chen and Director Shi saw the three referees off. One of the old referees suddenly said, "Headmaster Chen, if it's convenient, you can prepare your acceptance speech for the 10-person 10,000-meter relay event in advance. The competition isn't over yet, isn't that a bad idea?" Headmaster Chen said. "I've been a referee for decades. The results of the grade 1 students at number 60 high school this time have already broken the record for decades." The old referee said, "In your acceptance speech, I hope that Headmaster Chen will give a good account of your experience in training students." "What experience?" "It's all because the children in this year's competition are talented." Headmaster Chen smiled slightly. "As teachers, we should always give encouragement first. Only encouragement can bring out a child's potential to the greatest extent. Do you know Qin Mu, the president of our Huashu Disabled Aid Association?" The old referee nodded. "Of course I've heard of him." Qin Mu, the president of the Disabled Aid Association, was too famous. Before becoming president of the foundation, this President Qin had been a national first-class athlete who had won gold medals in dozens of events, and was famous all over the world for his hegemonic body. Actually, in our cultivation circle, there's no such thing as an hegemonic body. President Qin's hegemonic body came about by chance. The main reason was that President Qin met an expert when he was a child. The old referee, an expert? That's right. Headmaster Chen nodded and said, there was someone called Profound Saint Tyrannical Song who lied to him, saying that he had an amazing aptitude, and that he was definitely a rare martial arts genius in the cultivation world, a natural hegemonic body. Hearing this, the three referees were startled. And then? Headmaster Chen, he believed it. Chapter 555. When Wang Ling returned in the evening, he saw Loopy Toad's tight yellow exercise clothes in the bamboo basket in the garden. Loopy Toad had been cultivating diligently these 2 days, and it had become more and more familiar with the basic dog skills that Little Silver had given it previously as it continued to cultivate them day by day. When Wang Ling pushed the door open, he saw Loopy Toad and Sheep, one human and one dog, lying on the ground in the same position, as if they had completely melted into the ground. Wang Ling. What were they doing? Loopy Toad sighed. Cultivation is so tiring, I'm probably already a useless dog, Sheep sighed. Being a training partner is so tiring, and I even got rubbed today. I'm probably already a useless sheep. Previously, Wang Ling had learned that the basic dog skills that Loopy Toad was currently cultivating were things that Little Silver had stolen from Dog Saint's depository of Buddhist texts. After all, this was a technique that Dog Saint had created himself, so cultivating it would definitely be difficult. The first 2 forms were level 4, which Loopy Toad could digest on its own. It was just that the last 5 forms might be a little more difficult to understand. Wang Ling thought that he would take some time to help Loopy Toad improve it a little over the next few days. To be honest, this body technique spirit technique that Dog Saint had created was a little amazing. The levels of body techniques were different from those of normal spells because they could be divided into many forms. Loopy Toad's basic dog skills had 7 forms in total. The first 2 forms were level 4 and the last 5 forms were level 5. If Loopy Toad could master all 7 forms and use them in one go, its power wouldn't be inferior to a grade 8 spell. Although Loopy Toad looked very tired as it lay on the ground, Wang Ling could clearly feel that its spirit was indeed different from before. When all was said and done, this was a spirit technique that Dog Saint had created by combining the characteristics of canine spirit beasts. It was naturally designed for dogs, and the meridians that spirit energy flowed through were also based on the meridians in a spirit dog's body. After repeated practice, the compatibility between Loopy Toad's soul and body had clearly improved. After practicing the basic dog skills, the meridians that were originally blocked were obviously much smoother. But Wang Ling remembered that Little Silver had told him last time that there was something to take note of when cultivating the basic dog skills, but after all, it had been many years. Little Silver still hadn't recalled what it was. But judging from Loopy Toad's current cultivation results, it seemed that cultivating the basic dog skills was going very smoothly and it hadn't run into any other problems. The midterm exams were already over, and the sports meet was already halfway done. Thursday was the day of the medicine ball and the spirit beast battle, which coincided with each other. After the sports meet was over, Wang Ling felt that his days would be a little peaceful. It had been 13 weeks since school had started, and he had already sent so many people to prison. Wang Ling felt very tired. This year's batch of Year 1 students was not too peaceful. The point was that even he himself didn't know how many chapters he still had before he could graduate. When he opened the door, he saw someone lying on his bed with a pleased expression on his face. Yo, Lingzi, you're back. Wang Ling. Why was this guy here? Loopy Toad followed behind him with a surprised expression. Didn't you say last time that old Chi wouldn't let you out? Wang Ming quickly replied, that's right. But I haven't seen my brother for a day, and I miss him dearly. A day apart feels like 3 years. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, Wang Ming sat up cross-legged. Haven't you noticed that I'm different today? Wang Ling swept a careful look over Wang Ming, then stretched out his hand to touch him, only to find that his hand had directly passed through Wang Ming's body. Projection? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. This is remote projection technology. Wang Ming crossed his arms and said very proudly, actually, I've been studying it since old Chi issued the travel restriction last time. This projection technology is controlled by my mastermind, and it currently has a range that covers all of Songhai City. The main thing is that the projection chip I made last time was too small. After all, this is my first experiment, and I don't know if it will work. It can cover such a long range? Loopy Toad was also surprised. All of Songhai City, then you can go wherever you want. Wang Ming said quietly, you should know about our country's Heavenly E-satellite, right? When we sent people to replace parts of the satellite a few years ago, I implanted my little chip into one of them. Loopy Toad, Wang Ling, it's all thanks to this satellite that we can cover such a long range. Wang Ming's projected body floated in the air. Don't think that I looked like I was lying on a bed just now, but I was actually floating. I wasn't able to touch anything in my projected state, so I was a little hurt. The corners of Loopy Toad's mouth twitched. You still want to touch something. It's not impossible. Wang Ming said, our country's magic treasure projection technology is already very advanced. It won't be long before we can use magic treasures to connect with the nervous perception of the body, and combine a virtual projection with spirit power molecules to materialize a part of the body. In our previous experiments, we've already successfully materialized a projected hand, but this technology is still in the testing stage. Loopy Toad had just asked a question, but hadn't expected Wang Ming to go on and on. For a fanatical scientist, any progress in scientific research would make them more and more excited the more they talked about it. Father and Mother Wang didn't know about Wang Ming's projection today, because Wang Ming had directly projected himself into Wang Ling's bedroom in the Wang family's small villa. This technology was very powerful. If it really was as Wang Ming said, then in theory, as long as Wang Ming wanted to, he could use a clone to go anywhere in Songhai City. But there were risks in doing so. If someone discovered that Wang Ming's body was just a projection, it would definitely be widely reported, and Wang Ming was well aware of this. Thus, he wouldn't use this remote projection spell so easily. Wang Ling stared at Wang Ming's realistic projection and couldn't help asking telepathically, did you come here today to show off your projection? Oh, not really. Wang Ming curled his lips slightly and smiled. Apart from that, there's something else I want to tell you in person. Didn't you ask me to track down the address of an informant before? Did you find it? Wang Ling was very curious. That person is pretty smart. In order to hide his coordinates, he added several layers of defense. An average person really wouldn't be able to crack it. This time, I had to use the Heavenly E satellite's big data back-end calculations to successfully locate him. Wang Ming spread his hands. He looked at Wang Ling and said seriously, this person isn't easy to deal with. Looking at his skills, apart from Old Chi, he's probably the most powerful opponent I've met so far. If it's really as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, and this person knows so much about the past, I'm afraid he's also a hidden big shot. Lingzi, you have to be very careful. Wang Ling frowned. Do you have a specific location? Loopy Toad asked on the side. Yes. Wang Ming nodded. I tracked down all the information this person posted online, and in the end, I got a duplicate location. What's interesting is that this person posts at a fixed location every time, and even at a fixed time. He's obviously very confident in his defense and feels that no one can track him down. The point is that you and Lingzi are very familiar with this person's location. Loopy Toad, where exactly? Chapter 556. Number 60 High School again? The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched fiercely when it heard Wang Ming's answer. Wait a minute. Why was it, again? Loopy Toad recalled the ridicule it had heard when it was still at number 60 High School. Number 60 High School is as magical as Bright Longevity Village. It was indeed magical. It could almost be said that big shots had gathered, a nascent soul gatekeeper, a pioneer teacher Pan, a terrifying librarian, Mother One of the dark cuisine world, Old Antique who was an epic-level assassin, and now there was a big-shot expert suspected of being a monkey coder. However, who was this person's true identity? This person releases breaking news at a fixed time each week. If there's news, he'll choose to release it every Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon, and he's located in your school's computer room. From what we know so far, this person should be a student or teacher at your school. Wang Ming made his own deduction. Also, I'm certain that this person uses the same computer every time. Every Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon? Wang Ling cupped his chin in his hand as he thought about it. That happened to be the time for his computer class. But the arrangement of the computer class was a little different. It rotated on odd and even weeks, while the elite classes only had computer classes on 2 weeks. Odd weeks were when the regular classes used the computer room. That was to say, there were 4 classes in total who could use the computer room at 2:00 in the afternoon on Thursday, 2 regular classes and 2 elite classes. Altogether, more than 90 students were suspects. Furthermore, they couldn't completely rule out the 4 computer teachers. After all, with old Antique as an example, what if the computer teacher was also a big shot? In addition to testing out my remote projection technology, I came here today to talk about this. In any case, Lingzi, you have to be careful. I have a feeling that this person isn't here with good intentions, said Wang Ming. He had a strong intuition, which he had discovered when he had detected the specific location of this mysterious informant. But he still couldn't say whether this informant was friend or foe, but he still had to warn Wang Ling to be careful. But strangely, back when Wang Ling had first started school, Wang Ming had investigated the identities of everyone in senior grade 1. Except for the daughter of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, the rest of them actually had average family backgrounds. If this informant big shot really was one of Wang Ling's classmates, then it was even more proof that this person was so shrewd that people had to be on guard against him. Back then, he had asked Old Shi to use the official database to check the personal information of this cohort of Senior 1 students. Their names, heights, genders, files dating back to kindergarten. Wang Ming went through them one by one, and didn't find anyone particularly strange at all. Oh right, there is one. Wang Ming remembered. He remembered that in Wang Ling's class, there was someone called Hero Gua. This person had a lot of relatives. Other than that, everything else was quite normal. Wang Ming frowned as he pondered this, when Wang Ling suddenly noticed a change in him. Not good. Wang Ling, ? Loopy Toad, what? I have to go back first. Wang Ming raised his head. My original body received news that old Qi is in the hospital. President Qi is in the hospital? The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched, and it was immediately alarmed. Isn't President Qi one of the 10 generals? The 10 generals were all true immortals, how could they be in the hospital? Wang Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He ate Jia Yin's dragon pork chop, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. I clearly told him before, if he wants to eat Jia Yin's dragon pork chop, he has to use spirit energy to protect his stomach. Wang Ming dropped his forehead into his hand. Jia Yin's pork chop can already be considered a weapon of mass destruction. Didn't you say last time that President Qi banned Jia Yin from cooking it in the lab? Loopy Toad asked. Indeed, I didn't cook it in the laboratory. This time, Jia Yin brought it back to the laboratory after cooking it outside. Moreover, after Auntie's guidance last time, the pork chops that Jia Yin fried this time actually looked very good. It's no longer black, but golden yellow. The color is very attractive, and it doesn't look greasy at all. You didn't eat it? It's mainly because I was injured too deeply last time, and I've been eating porridge for the last 2 days to nourish my stomach. Good thing I didn't eat it. Wang Ming broke out in a sweat. Otherwise, the next time you see me, I might already be an urn. Being smashed into a box by friendly forces. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, but it looks pretty good, so it should taste pretty good, right? Loopy Toad was a little puzzled. Is Miss Jai really that lethal? Wang Ming had a, you don't understand, expression on his face. You don't know, that's the scariest thing. In the beginning, no matter what Jai Yin made, the food was always black and no one dared to eat it. Now that she had gone outside to find a teacher and asked the auntie for some advice, the food that Jai Yin made now didn't look like a problem at all. It looks like it's being served out of a restaurant. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming couldn't help feeling some lingering fear. Initially, Jia Yin's food didn't look edible at first glance. Now, Jia Yin's food was like a mushroom. It looked beautiful, but it was even more poisonous. Furthermore, Wang Ming had also noticed a pattern. The better the end product of Jia Yin's food looks, the more inedible it is. To be able to send a true immortal to the hospital after eating it, this thing is already a chemical weapon. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. It was July 19th on Wednesday in the 13th week of the semester. When he left the house in the morning, Wang Ling received a text message from Wang Ming. President Qi, who had been beaten up by friendly forces Jia Yin, was fine after having his stomach pumped in the hospital. Yesterday, it was actually President Qi who had been careless, and had taken a bite when he wasn't prepared at all, after this incident. President Shi could be said to have learned a lesson. From now on, no matter how delicious Jia Yin's food looked, he couldn't eat it. Oh, no, there would be no, from now on. Jia Yin was now banned from cooking anywhere. Listening to Wang Ming, Jia Yin's food had already been classified as a prohibited chemical poison by Huaxiao Nation's Cultivation Academy of Science. Furthermore, its lethality had already reached level 9, second only to the heavenly E-satellites E-bomb from heaven, which had reached level 10. When all was said and done, the pupil had surpassed the master. In some sense, Wang Ling felt that Jia Yin was much scarier than Mother Wan. At the very least, Mother Wan's food wouldn't make a true immortal faint from eating it. When Wang Ling arrived in class and handed in his homework, he started to flip through his history book. The first class on Wednesday morning was Old Antiques Theory of History class. Today's topic, which Wang Ling was very interested in, was the gate between worlds. Chapter 557. When he had arrived in class in the morning, he had actually heard some gossip about Old Antique breaking up with his girlfriend. Everyone knew who Old Antique was. Back when he had led everyone to the Spirit Sword Exchange meet at number 59 high school, he had fallen in love with Director Xia, the school's director of teaching. This news had spread very quickly. It was said that Old Antique and Director Xia had just broken up yesterday, and Dopiguo had already heard it firsthand. But this time, it wasn't one of Dopiguo's uncles who had told him, but that delinquent senior, He Buffing, who was determined to study hard at number 59 high school. As number 60 high school's gossip expert, Dopiguo didn't just have an uncle as a resource, he was also a famous social butterfly outside the school. Basically, it didn't take long for anyone who had met Dopiguo to become familiar with each other. Then, Dopiguo would turn them into intelligence traffickers and pull them into his personal gossip group. It was human nature to be nosy, and master of Dopey's strength lay in the fact that not only did he like to gossip, but he also had the ability to drag other people along with him. This was the scariest thing. A lot of people in class didn't know Old Antique's real identity, and felt that this was just his first love, so it had to be a huge blow to him. Even Lotus Sun, who had personally witnessed Old Antique kill a golden core killer with a piece of chalk at the start of the semester, had only thought that Old Antique wasn't ordinary. But his identity as gorgeous itinerant, in grade 1, class 3, Wang Ling was the only one who knew. Back when Old Antique had been in his prime, he had been a famous little fresh meat in the assassin circle, and who knew how many people had designs on him. But Wang Ling felt that he was still young when it came to relationships, so it wasn't good for him to say too much. Perhaps Old Antique had been right to end his relationship. After all, given gorgeous itinerant's identity, Director Xia was just a weak woman. When Old Antique came to class, he found that it was strangely quiet and no one was talking. Everyone in class thought that Old Antique would be in a very low mood today, but who knew that he would be as if nothing had happened. As usual, he stood on the dais with a bag of spicy strips and a wide smile on his face. Students, let's get ready for class. Everyone, flip to section 5, Modern History. Today, we'll talk about the gate between worlds. Old Antique rubbed his hands together. He hadn't brought a book or prepared a PowerPoint. He had already committed these things to memory. Outstanding teachers could basically teach without books when they were completely familiar with the teaching materials. Everyone, stare. Old Antique. Students, if you have something to say it nicely, don't stare at me, I'm very shy. Everyone continued to stare. Old Antique wasn't a fool. Combined with the uncharacteristic silence in the classroom when he had entered, he guessed that the matter of him and Director Xia's breakup at number 59 high school had most likely come to light. After all, the students of both schools knew that they had been together back then. Now that they were separated, this gossip would naturally spread. In fact, Old Antique had long since anticipated this, but the only thing he hadn't expected was that this gossip would spread a little too quickly. He had broken up with Xia Huilan yesterday afternoon, but it seemed like the whole world knew this morning. No wonder even the old man who sold egg pancakes at the school gate had looked at him strangely this morning. Furthermore, the old man had specially cracked an extra egg in his pancake and added a piece of tenderloin covered in coffee-colored sweet sauce. Old Antique now finally understood the meaning of this. It turned out that this meant tenderloin, chicken flying, and egg breaking. Old Antique took out a spicy strip and put it in his mouth. I believe that all of you already know, that's right. I broke up. There was no point in hiding it. In any case, since everyone already knew, Old Antique felt that he might as well say it out loud and then go to class in peace. Why did you break up? Dopigwa already couldn't hold back his desire to gossip. Work reasons, as well as personal reasons, but don't worry, we broke up peacefully. This breakup won't affect the friendship between number 59 high school and number 60 high school. Speaking up to this point, Old Antique couldn't help spreading his hands. Actually, it's still because I'm a little playful. A girlfriend or something isn't very suitable for me. I probably won't have one in this lifetime, and can only rely on my left and right hands to make a living. Everyone, Old Antique raised his eyebrows. This topic was already over, and he clearly didn't want to continue. Cough, cough, next, let's officially start class. Returning to the topic of class, Old Antique said with a serious expression, I believe that everyone has already come into contact with information on the gate between worlds from various sources. Because the gate between worlds descended irregularly in the past, it caused our country a lot of losses and disasters. But currently, we already have fairly sophisticated monitoring equipment that can detect fluctuations in the gate's descent in advance. Our country is already leading the world in terms of prevention and monitoring measures in this area. The gate between worlds doesn't just descend in our country? At that moment, Little Peanut couldn't help asking. Of course. Old Antique nodded. The coordinates of the gate between worlds descent are random. There are records of it appearing not only in our country, but also abroad. Although it's rarely descended, it's not like it doesn't happen. The reason why immortal Shipai had been able to succeed was largely because he was Fang Xing's father and mother. There was no need to pay attention to the theory of yin and yang compatibility at all. Humans were born with a high degree of yin and yang compatibility, just like the previous incident with the old devil. That old devil took advantage of the impatient nature of many cultivators and tricked them into searching for the stone ghost mask. In the name of inheriting the orthodoxy, he found a body for himself and seized the opportunity to possess it. Old Antique smiled. So students, if you come across something good in the future where you can inherit a Taoist orthodoxy, please do register with the official Taoist Orthodoxy Inheritance Organization. But basically, the probability of encountering such a good thing is not high. Why? Finding disciples now is different from the past. In the past, as long as one was talented, there was a possibility of catching the eye of a big shot. But now, with the continuous advancement of science in the cultivation world, it can be said that the big shot's horizons are getting higher and higher. It's not enough to just be talented, you also have to be able to speak, be able to handle matters, and be able to withstand tests of character. If you're told to serve tea, you'll serve tea, and you'll come and go at your beck and call. You can be a waiter for hundreds of years and still have no complaints. Isn't it popular to enter a family tree now? This is actually one of the ways to find a successor to the Taoist orthodoxy. Old Antique's words carried a hint of ridicule. Although his tone sounded relaxed, Wang Ling noticed that a lot of people in class were lost in deep thought. When they were young, a lot of people had probably fantasized about what it would be like to wake up one day and suddenly possess the formidable power that they had always dreamed of. Inheriting a Taoist orthodoxy through the official channels was indeed a way to gain strength in a short period of time, but it was often very difficult to realize. Today, you could enter someone else's family tree and become a senior disciple, but as long as your shifu was even the slightest bit dissatisfied, you could be directly removed from the family tree in a matter of minutes. Should he be a piece of miserable pork, or should he become a thinking reed? This is a question worth pondering. Therefore, the inheritance of orthodoxy was not as glamorous as it seemed. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Sometimes, the truth behind an event was much more complicated than it seemed. Wang Ling stared at the relaxed expression on Old Antique's face. He realized that this was one of Old Antique's great charms when he was teaching, he could inadvertently make the students think a lot. Perhaps he sensed that the atmosphere in the classroom was a little serious. Old Antique rubbed the back of his head and said with a smile, "Of course, if I were taking in disciples, I wouldn't have so many requirements. If I want to accept a disciple, first of all, he must pass the test of history. He must know a lot of gossip, and secondly, he must know how to play." Dopigwa suddenly raised his hand in excitement. Teacher, what do you think of me?" Old Antique looked at him. "Do you eat spicy strips?" Dopigwa, "No." Old Antique smiled all over his face. "I confirmed with my eyes that you're not the person I'm looking for." Dopigwa, everyone. Today was Wednesday, which happened to be the day when Loopy Toad and Fatty Luo had made an appointment to pick up the custom-made magic treasure. Because Fatty Luo never used chat software, Loopy Toad didn't even know what he had designed this custom-made magic treasure. The Bone King had been left behind by poor Dog Saint, so it could be said that it was quite rare. If it messed up the refinement process, would Dog Saint's hot pot lid collapse? Because Sheep had already led the way last time, Loopy Toad went on its own this time. Boundless Road was a street for refining weapons. Fatty Luo's metal shop wasn't too conspicuous, but it was a rare 5-star premium shop on the Cultivation Review Network on Boundless Road. When it reached the shop entrance, Loopy Toad was still wondering what kind of magic treasure Fatty Luo would refine the Bone King into. When he entered, Fatty Luo saw Loopy Toad's figure and nodded tacitly. "Don't move, I'll go get the thing." After saying that, he turned around and went to the refining time chamber at the back of the shop to get the thing. A few minutes later, Fatty Luo came out with a box in his hands and gently placed it in front of Loopy Toad. "Brother Dog, this is the magic weapon you refined from your Bone King. It's a third-class holy weapon, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. If we can find the corresponding materials later on, we can continue to refine it into a second-class or even first-class weapon." "Third class? Not bad." Loopy Toad's eyes lit up. After all, it had been refined in such a short time. It didn't have too many expectations for its grade. It was fine as long as it was convenient. Furthermore, the most important thing was that there was still room for improvement in the Bone King. Fatty Luo crossed his arms and was very pleased with himself. "Brother Dog, open it and take a look. I'm very satisfied with this work." Loopy Toad opened the box, and then it saw a lustrous green light reflected from the box. Loopy Toad stared at the light, its expression a little absent-minded. It understood this principle. As the main material in the refining process, the Bone King could indeed be affected by other supplementary materials, which could cause the finished product to change color slightly. But why? Chapter 559. Could it be that it was inextricably linked to the green for the rest of its life? At the very beginning, Loopy Toad had refused in its heart, but after it calmed down and carefully sized up the refined Bone King, it realized that it was in fact quite beautiful on the outside. It wasn't a pure green, but rather a green with a hint of white. It was a little like jade, and the more it looked at it, the more pleasing it seemed to the eye. The refined Bone King already didn't have any trace of a broken bone. After being polished, it seemed to be a little thinner than the original material, but more compact. If it had to describe it, it looked a little like the jade dog beating stick that Loopy Toad had read in martial arts novels before. "It looks pretty good," Loopy Toad said, "but will it be very brittle?" "Hee, this is a third-class holy weapon, how brittle can it be?" As he waved his palm leaf fan, Fatty Luo took out a long black steel knife from the shelf on the side. "This is a magic weapon for testing, let me show you." As soon as he said this, before Loopy Toad could react, Fatty Luo's saber had already fallen. There was a soft bang as the Bone King reflected a green spirit light, and the black steel saber was actually directly split in two. This Bone King might not be the most lethal, but it's very tough. Furthermore, it's very adaptable, and can be used flexibly in various situations. "Its appearance can change at will," Fatty Luo said. "You can transform as you please?" Loopy Toad was blank. This was probably a magic weapon's characteristic, but this was the first time it had heard of it. For example, the Wuji umbrella of the Demon Hunters Association's President Cheng Bai had the space ability. The heaven-cleaving sword that evil sword god had obtained from his Shifu, sword immortal Fan Rui, had the chaos ability. The brilliant victory sword in grenade-throwing senior immortal's hand had the absolute defense ability. The Lord Jinka under Little Master Ling had the power ability. But what on earth was this ability to change at will? It's a little troublesome to explain, but it can actually be classified as a type of space ability, but it's a very special one that's different from the common spatial attribute like space transfer. The Bone King in your hand right now can combine with the spatial environment to achieve free transformation, to become what you want. Actually, this thing was a little complicated to explain, so Fatty Luo decided to just do it. He held the Bone King and injected spiritual power into it. He shouted, "Sword, come!" Then, Loopy Toad saw green spirit energy emerge from the Bone King, and it actually turned into a jade longsword in Fatty Luo's hand. "You can do that?" Loopy Toad was stunned. After the demonstration, Fatty Luo threw the Bone King into Loopy Toad's paw. "Yes, this is what it means to do as one pleases." Fatty Luo said, "If it's used well, this dog saint's bone is an extremely powerful magic tool. It can be used to attack and defend." Doing as he pleased was a rare trait. But as you can see, the process of transformation takes time. The more complicated the shape, the longer it takes. This requires more practice. Thinking up to this point, Fatty Luo said, "Have you ever thought about what kind of artifact spirit it will be when your compatibility with the Bone King increases and you give birth to an artifact spirit?" Loopy Toad, "I just hope that it won't be green." Fatty Luo, "I don't know if it's green or not, but since this Bone King was made from Dog Saint's bone, there's an 80% chance that the artifact spirit will be a dog." Loopy Toad, "It doesn't matter if it's a dog, there are a lot of Lolitas in our dog circle now." Lolitas, Lolitas. Fatty Luo broke out in a sweat. But generally speaking, an artifact spirit's appearance was formed after a long period of contact between the magic weapon and its owner. Usually, the appearance and temperament of the artifact spirit would be based on its owner's wishes, and there wouldn't be too much of a difference. Of course, there was a very small chance that it would be the complete opposite of its owner's wishes. For example, Dog 2 currently hoped that its artifact spirit would be a dog with a Lolitas, so there was a very small chance that it would be a muscular bro dog. Loopy Toad nodded and mentioned Wei Ji. "That's right, don't I have a pet trainer friend? After getting to know him, I actually learned a lot about the dog circle in private." Fatty Luo, Loopy Toad spread its paws. "In our spirit dog circle, there's a little radish dog who made a lot of money off of a shit-shoveling officer called Paladin. He plays chicken with him every day." Fatty Luo, little radish dog? Loopy Toad nodded. "That's right. It's a little radish dog. Aren't little puppies and wolf puppies popular now? Little radish dogs are also one of them." Fatty Luo suddenly felt that his knowledge had increased. Loopy Toad successfully took the Bone King from Fatty Luo, and the whole process didn't take long. In Fatty Luo's shop just now, Loopy Toad had already used its dog blood on the Bone King to bind it to its owner. For the rest of the day, Loopy Toad decided to go back and refine its basic dog skills, as well as study how to use the Bone King. Tomorrow, Thursday, was the day of the Spirit Beast Battle Royale. Since it had obtained the Bone King, Loopy Toad decided to test the Bone King's combat value in actual combat. Actual combat experience was often very important. Of course, the Spirit Beast Battle Royale tomorrow was actually just a game for Loopy Toad. It had to save its real energy for the battle when it returned to the clan. Friday. Loopy Toad had already decided on a time. The time limit for its prophetic dream was up, and it had to go back and settle everything. To this day, Loopy Toad still couldn't forget the scene in that prophetic dream of the Toad clan's venerable elder when leading the ministers in a tearful prayer in the main hall. It was like a nightmare that haunted Loopy Toad's mind from time to time. It was time to put an end to all this. On the way home, Loopy Toad looked at the sky, and the scene in front of it seemed to blur as it saw the blue sky that it could only see in its hometown. When Loopy Toad got home, it changed into its yellow skin-tight exercise clothes and wanted to find Sheep as its sparring partner. Yesterday, it had used the first and second forms at the same time and had rubbed against Sheep's skirt. This was a very groundbreaking improvement. And its ultimate goal was to lift Sheep's skirt. But after searching for a long time, Loopy Toad couldn't find any trace of Sheep. Looking at the time, Loopy Toad remembered that it was time for the old man to go grocery shopping, so it was most likely that he and Sheep had gone out to buy groceries. Wang Ling had already returned from school. Looking through the window on the second floor, he raised his eyebrows slightly. He glanced at Jinka on the bed. Jinka trembled slightly, and very quickly turned into human form to come over to Wang Ling's side in response. Wang Ling looked at Loopy Toad, who was looking for a sparring partner in the courtyard, and rubbed Jinka's hair. Jinka yawned, then turned into a stream of light and directly landed in front of Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad was startled by the sudden descent of the brown spirit light. Jinka's expression turned serious. "I will be your opponent." Loopy Toad, I refuse. Jinka, no, you can. Chapter 560. Was it really going to fight? Loopy Toad couldn't help feeling a sense of heaviness in its heart as it faced the white-robed sword spirit in front of it. But it had to say that this was indeed a rare opportunity to spar. In terms of actual combat experience, Loopy Toad felt that all the enlightened gremlins in the Wang family's small villa combined might not even be half as strong as this white-robed sword spirit in front of it. This was an existence that could easily use the highest profound meaning of Sword Dao, the world-annihilating sword. But Dog too had to admit that this was a rare opportunity for a sparring session. Loopy Toad had its own theories about Jinka's origin after the Immortal Mansion incident. Although it hadn't been there to see it for itself, from Little Silver's description, it had been a very shocking scene. Over 1,000 spirit swords were sealed in the intrinsic spirit field of the Master of Immortal Mansion. After Jinka had appeared, he had just given them a look, and they had immediately changed owners without even thinking about it. That was the boldness that only a true king of sword spirits had. What did this mean? It meant that the white-robed sword spirit in front of it already stood at the top of Sword Dao, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the embodiment of Sword Dao. Dumbfounded, Jinka tilted his head and looked at Loopy Toad. "Ready?" Loopy Toad stared at this face, and the corners of its eyes twitched fiercely. This expression was too similar. If it hadn't known that Jinka was just a sword spirit, Loopy Toad really would have thought that this was Little Master Ling's biological son. Apart from the hair color, this paralyzed face, and even the look in his eyes were extremely similar. There were millions of dead fish eyes in the world, but not all of them had Little Master Ling's characteristics, which were both cold and gentle. Loopy Toad had seen plenty of dead fish eyes in the crowd, but only Wang Ling's dead fish eyes were special. It was said that spirit swords were like their masters, even their eyes were so similar. Loopy Toad felt that no one else could be like this. Loopy Toad took a deep breath in the face of Jinka. The basic dog skills emphasized speed and accuracy, and it was very important to stay calm when punching. At its peak yesterday, Loopy Toad had already been able to throw 200 punches in 1 second, but it had only managed to graze Sheep's skirt. It was very clear that this white-robed sword spirit was even more difficult to deal with than Sheep. "I'm going." Loopy Toad, who was wearing a tight yellow exercise suit, jumped back to keep a distance of several zhang from Jinka. Jinka could feel spirit energy gathering under Loopy Toad's paw. A moment later, Loopy Toad abruptly sprang up from the ground and pounced directly at Wang Ling. Its paws left 4 round pits in the ground, and it looked very powerful. While it was in the air, Loopy Toad had already used the first and second forms of the basic dog skills. The two styles were used at the same time. The dog fist turned into hundreds of afterimages in the air, dazzling everyone's eyes. But Jinka's expression didn't change in the slightest. Too slow. He raised his hand, and brown sword intent emerged. In order not to hurt Loopy Toad, this sword intent didn't have the slightest destructive power, and instead acted as an absolute parry similar to the brilliant victory sword. Bang 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 bang, Loopy Toad felt like each of its punches was hitting the back of the sword. It changed its angle to attack, and the sword will followed, blocking all of its attacks. After 2 moves of the dog skills, Loopy Toad couldn't even get close to Jinka, let alone touch him. Your punches are too slow. This sword intent only has less than 10% of its power, that's all. Jinka stretched out a finger and drew a line 3 meters in front of him, then looked at Loopy Toad. If you can enter this line, you win. Loopy Toad was stunned. How much did he look down on it? Even if it didn't want to fight, it had to fight for pride. As Little Master Ling's first contract spirit beast, Loopy Toad's expression started to turn serious. Bone King. Using the swallowing spell, it took the emerald green Bone King out of its mouth and started to think. Boxing glove, boxing glove, boxing glove. Wang Ling watched this scene from his room. He had been the one to ask Fatty Luo to refine the Bone King previously. To be able to refine Dog Saint's bone into a third-class magic weapon in such a short time proved that Fatty Luo's skill in refining weapons was indeed extraordinary. Furthermore, this magic treasure's characteristic was a little special. It was actually a shape-shifting magic treasure of the space system, and the ability to change at will wasn't common. In the garden, Loopy Toad stared closely at Jinka. It wanted to use the Bone King's power to increase its attack speed, but this was the first time it had used the Bone King's magic treasure characteristic to transform. Sure enough, as Fatty Luo had said, while the ability to change at will was very rare and very strong, it wasn't easy to use. It actually took a full 30 seconds for the Bone King to completely transform into a pair of boxing gloves. This won't do. It looks like I still have to practice more. Loopy Toad sighed in its heart. A battle was ever-changing, unless it was prepared in advance. 30 seconds was a little too long. After transforming, the Bone King turned into a pair of emerald green boxing gloves, which Loopy Toad's dog paws put on. Not only did it not feel the slightest bit heavy, Loopy Toad's dog paws actually felt a lot lighter than before. Loopy Toad was delighted at this discovery. There's one last step left. Loopy Toad looked at Jinka and took a deep breath. Jinka? Then, Loopy Toad opened its mouth again and actually took out a tape recorder, which it had bought with the money it had swindled from Little Silver. After that, Loopy Toad pressed the play button, and a familiar melody came out of the recorder. Wang Ling was blank. This song was very familiar. It was a very popular old song. Dog 2's body began to sway along with the melody. Wang Ling was startled. This guy could actually do the ghost steps. This was a pure, hot-blooded melody. Wang Ling only remembered that it was a very old classic, but he just couldn't remember the title of the song. When the music had been playing for more than a minute, he saw that Dog 2 had already stopped dancing and had started to prepare for an attack, ready to pounce. When the melody played for 1 minute and 20 seconds, Dog 2 officially made its move. It was still the first and second forms of the basic dog skills, but its attack speed was clearly faster than before. Jinka was using sword intent on the same level as Loopy Toad's, and he was already clearly feeling a little strained. Ah, hit 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 hit. Dog 2's fists were like flying dragons, and in 2 seconds, he had thrown more than 600 punches. But this wasn't the end of it. When the music reached its climax, Dog 2 suddenly started to sing loudly. My right paw opens the sky, I transform into a dog, I move the mountains and rivers, I fill in the cracks, I adjust the time and space of the sunrise in the east, I return to the primordial world to dominate and control. Wang Ling and Jinka. Following the impassioned music, Jinka felt as if the dog in front of him had become a different dog. If he continued to maintain his current sword intent, it might be hard for him to parry. Lowering his eyes, Jinka wondered if he should increase his strength a little more. But at that moment, the emerald green boxing gloves on Loopy Toad's paws transformed from the Bone King actually changed again, and dense spikes sprouted out of them like bamboo shoots after a rain. Sword Dao, the power of? Jinka's expression changed slightly. He couldn't be wrong. Although the power of Sword Dao on the spikes was very weak, it indeed contained the power of Sword Dao, which Loopy Toad had inherited from Evil Sword God, the 10-meter sword circle. Chapter 561. Wang Ling, who was watching the battle, was also stupefied. It was actually able to perfectly combine the power of Sword Dao with its own spirit technique through a magic treasure, and thus complement each other in battle. Was this also a kind of power brought about by the Bone King's freewheeling characteristic? Wang Ling cupped his chin in contemplation. He couldn't think of any other reasonable explanation. But if that was the case, this Bone King could be said to be a perfect match for Dog 2. It was simply like a life-bonded magic treasure. With the background music of the song Dragon Fist, Buttface aura surged. The emerald green glove in his hand, which had been transformed from the Bone King, combined with the power of the Sword Tao, was filled with spikes. In a short moment, Buttface aura had multiplied. Jinka raised his eyebrows slightly. He saw that Loopy Toad's body had already formed an invisible gravitational field of 10 meters. This was the unique Sword Dao gravitational field of the 10-meter sword circle. Now that Loopy Toad had combined the power of the Bone King, it had already begun to take shape, but compared with the complete form that evil Sword God had displayed back then, it was still quite a ways off. The 10-meter sword circle that evil Sword God had displayed back then was like a small planet that directly formed a 10-meter domain. In a split second, it erupted with an enormous gravitational force that sucked in everything around it and then tore it to shreds. The more proficient the power of Sword Dao with this characteristic, the stronger the gravitational force. At that time, evil Sword God's 10-meter sword circle could already produce holy void light, and anyone who was sucked into it would feel a strong sense of weakness. But to reach that level, Loopy Toad had to master more than 95% of the power of Sword Dao. Even so, the gravitational wave that Loopy Toad was now releasing was already enough to make people feel like they were being pulled. Not bad, Jinka praised indifferently. He could already see Dog 2 madly brandishing its spiked boxing glove to clash with the sword intent that Jinka was emitting, which was less than 10%. But it's no use. Jinka raised his hand and was about to increase the power of his sword intent, but at that moment, he suddenly saw Dog 2's yellow tights actually crumble under the power of the 10-meter Sword Dao. Then, Jinka saw this scene. In the void, a completely naked green-furred dog waved its jade-green spiked boxing gloves in a frenzy. Its indescribable part was like a green bristlegrass, swaying crazily in the wind as its body swayed. Jinka, you said, do not look at indecent things. Jinka hurriedly covered his eyes. Good chance. Loopy Toad knew its time had come. It met the sword intent with a ferocious hammering, and directly entered the 3-meter boundary Jinka had drawn. At the same time, he leapt high into the air, put away his spiked gloves, and pressed his paw prints on Jinka's white robe. The entire set of movements was as smooth as flowing water. Buttface said, I won. Wang Ling and Jinka, at this time, the sun was setting in the west. Buttface was facing the dusk, and his face was filled with unprecedented confidence. Patter. It turned off the recorder behind it and couldn't help but exclaim, as expected. No one can beat me in my BGM. Wang Ling and Jinka, when the old man and sheep came back from grocery shopping, they found Jinka sitting upright in the living room, rubbing his eyes with a serious expression on his face as he gave himself a massage. Lord Jinka. Sheep moved closer to Jinka and looked at him strangely, but realized that Jinka wasn't paying attention to her. The old man couldn't help turning to Loopy Toad, who was lying on the floor, and asking, Little Coo, what are you doing? Dog 2, doing eye exercises. The old man and sheep, that night, neither Father Wang nor Lai Mengmeng came down for dinner. In the study, Lai Mengmeng was doing his best to urge Father Wang to write his draft. Although Father Wang had crushed millions of votes in the last double monthly votes battle as the undisputed champion, he had still owed a lot of drafts. Among these millions of monthly votes were the support of big shots, as well as the support and help of fans. But now that he owed more than 100,000 words, Father Wang really felt like dying. He didn't even bother to adjust his black-rimmed glasses as he typed numbly on the keyboard. After typing who knew how many words, Father Wang said weakly, How many words do I still owe? Lai Mengmeng calculated the number of words. Not many, just 110,000. You can rest after today's battle. Father Wang, Lai Mengmeng, don't you still have that invigorating cigar? Hurry up and take a few puffs. Father Wang looked like he wanted to die. Can I go back on my word? Crossing his arms, Lai Mengmeng smiled and looked at Father Wang. How do you want to go back on your word? Father Wang, for example, if I post on Weibo and say that red hair medicinal wine is fake, will I be arrested across provinces? Lai Mengmeng, Father Wang's gloomy eyes suddenly lit up. Actually, I've already thought of a plan to delay updates. I'll post that it's fake wine. Then, you can use your Weibo to help me repost it, and say that that I've been arrested across provinces and can't update. Generally, once you're in custody, you can coax and pester me for more than 7 days. That way, I can delay it for 7 days. Lai Mengmeng, then what about after 7 days, Father Wang? Just say that although I was bailed out, red hair medicinal wine still won't let me off. It started to send people to kill me, and they chased me to the ends of the earth. In the end, I had no choice but to flee the city I lived in. I drifted all the way to the Holy Land of the South Pole, where I finally built a rocket and flew into space to Mars to start a brand new life. Lai Mengmeng was silent. Actually, you can try posting on Weibo. Just say, if I say that red hair medicinal wine is fake, what should I do if they're prepared to send people across provinces to arrest me? Can I? Father Wang was pleasantly surprised. Yes. Lai Mengmeng nodded. Father Wang swiftly edited his Weibo post, not even adding the dog head. After about 3 minutes, Father Wang refreshed his Weibo post. There were already more than 2,000 likes and hundreds of comments and reposts. The first Weibo comment, visitor from hell. Jose's response, which organization is so bold? I'll send the hell envoy right away. The second Weibo comment was from the Exploding Sky Sect's official Weibo, shocking. Wang Situ has been arrested. Our Exploding Sky sect will be the first to disagree. Do you understand the cultivation grenade? Our Exploding Sky sect disciples are going to blow up the door and rescue him? Fist salute, fist salute. The third Weibo comment was from the official Disabled Elderly Village Weibo, Village Chief Chinmu. This author says he's been arrested and doesn't want to update. Doge, the fourth Weibo comment was from the Legend of Paladin _Healing Knight official Weibo. Teacher Wang Situ must be using this as an excuse to sneak a peek at Lolas with me. Let's go to Twerky to see Lolas. They're all legal Lolas now. Chapter 562. There were still a lot of comments left on Weibo. Lai Mengmeng casually scrolled through one and saw that it was either an official Weibo post of a cultivation sect that had been forwarded, or some sect elder or even sect leader had left a comment below. A person whose identity was verified as Principal of Huaxiu University of Thunder and Lightning, and Head of Guadian Martial Arts Dojo, commented, "There's no such thing as procrastinating. I can't help but want to teach any author who procrastinates a lesson." From Lolita Immortal Instructor blog, is Lord Wang Situ tired? Our celestial sect provides door-to-door performance services to improve your mind. We don't charge. As long as it was updated, it would be fine. If you need, please PM this official Bonyang. Moi. A comment from the official Weibo of Legend of Paladin _Healing Paladin under the lowly immortal sect, official Weibo girl. Please follow me. Mutual fan. Lai Mengmeng looked at Father Wang, then directly grabbed the mouse and closed the Weibo page. Stop struggling, just work hard on writing. As soon as Lai Mengmeng said this, Father Wang saw his phone on the table suddenly vibrate as he received a secret text message from the number 77777777. When he saw the number, Father Wang already knew who it was. He opened the message and saw that it was from that Lord. That adult, I saw your Weibo. Someone wants to arrest you? What was that red hair medicinal wine for? Should I get someone to check it out? Forget it. I'll just directly ban the trademark. I've already asked President Xi to locate your phone. If someone in Songhai City comes looking for you, President Xi will know right away. I'll look for whoever chases after you. So hurry up and update. Without an immortal king to watch, I'm going to die. 3. Father Wang. Standing far away, Lai Mengmeng didn't see the specific content of Father Wang's message, but it was very obvious. When he saw this message, Father Wang's expression had already turned deathly still. Also, the number of the message just now was 77. Needless to say, this must be a message from a big shot fan urging him to update. 77. Lai Mengmeng cupped his chin and thought, the world is focusing on you. July 20th was the 13th Thursday of the semester. At noon, Wang Ling was going to test the medicine ball when the opening ceremony was already over. It wasn't like last time, where there were 3 whole grades of spectators, which made him feel a lot more at ease. However, there were still onlookers. They were all people who didn't want to rest during the afternoon self-cultivation and came out to watch. Apart from Wang Ling, there were 3 other people in grade 1 who had signed up for the medicine ball event: Fang Xing, that classmate Shi Shuai from before, and Hu Su, who had been held back for 4 whole years and whose grades had recently improved by leaps and bounds. After the slap in the face the day before yesterday, Shi Shuai was not as arrogant as yesterday, which made Teacher Yi very happy. Shi Shuai was usually a troublemaker and had caused quite a bit of trouble in school. The day before yesterday, the results of the 10 people had been extraordinary, but Shi Shuai was the only one who was at the bottom. Teacher Yi reckoned that this matter should have dealt a big blow to Shi Shuai. Therefore, in today's medicine ball competition, regardless of whether Shi Shuai's results were good or not, Teacher Yi had decided to give him a round of encouragement. After hitting him with a stick, he had to give him a piece of candy. This was the basic operation. Every teacher at number 60 high school paid great attention to spiritual education. The success of a spiritual education would directly affect a person's external development. This was especially true in grade 1, when students would feel empty and confused. They were especially prone to cynicism, and liked to post especially pretentious, non-mainstream posts in their WeChat moments and WeChat moments. It was especially important to guide them properly. This time, the supervisors were still the same 3 referees who had been here the day before and the day before. However, this time, the arbiter was the old referee of the 3, and Audiobook wasn't present today because of work. Holding a special red medicine ball in his hands, the old referee gave a pre-match explanation. According to the competition rules for the medicine ball event in the district sports meet this time, we will evaluate the results of 4 students: Wang Ling, Fang Xing, Shi Shuai and classmate Hu Su. In the end, the total score will be calculated by adding up the distance they threw. 1 meter is 1 point. Full score is 100 meters. After saying that, the old referee handed the special red solid ball to Shi Shuai. You go first. The old referee did not do this intentionally. It was purely because Shi Shuai was closer to the ball. It was true that Shi Shuai had left a very deep impression on people the day before yesterday as a contrarian. However, he had to be given a chance to change. What if he did well today? An ordinary person's medicine ball weighed between 5 and 8 kilograms. If a foundation establishment cultivator used an ordinary medicine ball, it naturally wouldn't be a problem to throw it several hundred meters. However, this red medicine ball had been specially custom-made by the Cultivation Academy for foundation establishment cultivators to use in competitions. Although it was small, it weighed 100 kilograms. The moment Shi Shuai touched it, his hands couldn't help sinking. Although it wasn't as easy as the old referee holding the ball with one hand, it wasn't a problem for him to throw it. The old judge was a cultivator of the Golden Core stage. For him, the medicine ball of the building foundation stage was as heavy as a chicken. On the other side, the remaining 2 referees had already set up a sand path on number 60 High's sports field using a sand gourd magic treasure to prevent the medicine ball from damaging the sports field when it fell to the ground. The sand path was 100 meters long, but the 3 referees generally felt that foundation establishment students who hadn't gone through professional training wouldn't be able to throw it very far. Yesterday, the furthest the 2 key high schools, Reliance High School and Prime Elevation High School, had thrown was only 70 meters. What was more, number 60 high school didn't have the ability to compete in the medicine ball event in previous years. It had lost the last 2 years, and had been at the bottom of the table. Number 59 high school's result had been a long way behind number 60 high school's. When it was time to officially throw the medicine ball, Shi Shuai couldn't help looking at Wang Ling. He had been looking for an opportunity to apologize to him all this time. Shi Shuai had been planning this since the opening ceremony the day before yesterday. He had repeated his apology lines countless times in his heart, but just couldn't get them out. Furthermore, there were a lot of people nearby now, and he was too embarrassed to do so. Let's compete first, then look for another opportunity. Shi Shuai secretly grit his teeth, then looked at the 100 meters of sand in front of him with a serious expression. He gathered strength, then positioned his body like a catapult, and threw the ball forward with a roar. Go! Shi Shuai's medicine ball flew in a perfect arc in the air and finally fell into the sandpit in front of him. The hell? 73 meters? The old referee and the 2 referees on the side, as well as Teacher Yi and all the students in the field, were directly stupefied. On the side, Fang Xing smiled as if he had expected this. Chapter 563. 73 meters, everyone was shocked. The old referee was completely dumbfounded when he saw Shi Shuai's result. 73 meters was another record. In history, the best result for a medicine ball throw of a 100 kilograms foundation establishment cultivator was only 71 meters. Shi Shuai had never expected to throw it so far. In that split second just now, he had thought that 40 meters would be his limit. What was going on? He looked at his hands in disbelief. Could it be that during yesterday's relay run, he had inadvertently opened up his conception and governor vessels? The referees were dumbfounded, but the trajectory just now had been normal. There was an anti-cheating mechanism on the sand path. If a spell was used to cheat, the mechanism would be activated. The instant the medicine ball was thrown, its speed and landing point would already be monitored, so if Shi Shuai had cheated, the referees would be able to tell. The truth was that this anti-cheating mechanism existed in name only. The reason was very simple, because it was just an anti-cheating mechanism. But what Wang Ling had used was a great Dao. The old referee sucked in a breath, still a little dazed. He had been at number 60 high for 3 days, and he had broken records 3 days in a row. On the first day, he had run the 10,000-meter relay with a sword. On the second day, the shooting student representative Jiang Bai had broken the record with 0 mistakes. And now, on the third day, he had also won the medicine ball. Number 60 high this year really seemed pretty amazing. Record down the result, 73 meters. The old referee finally announced. He sighed in his heart, the younger generation will surpass us in time. Lotus-san, I didn't expect classmate Shi Shuai to be so amazing. A group of people from grade 1, class 3 came out to support him. Among the familiar faces were Little Peanut, Super Chin, Dopigua, Lotus-san, Feather Lin and the others. Dopigua, he got lucky, just like Super Chin the day before yesterday. Super Chin? To be honest, Super Chin really couldn't refute Dopigua's words. If he hadn't been in top form and had gotten lucky, he wouldn't have been able to achieve that result in the 1,000-meter relay run the day before yesterday. This result already broke the record, right? Little Peanut said, and I know that this sand path has an anti-cheating mechanism. If you use a spell while throwing the medicine ball, it'll be detected. Super Chin snickered. Do you think it's because the spell is so advanced that this anti-cheating mechanism can't detect it? Super Chin said this in a very low and purely joking tone, but Wang Ling's lips twitched when he heard it. Student Wang Ling, it's your turn. With such an outstanding performance, Shi Shuai was in a great mood. He directly handed the medicine ball to Wang Ling and apologized. I'm really sorry about what happened the day before yesterday. As he spoke, he reached out to give Wang Ling another warm hug. But just as he stretched out his hand, Fang Xing swatted it away. Nice apology. This child is worth teaching. But classmate Wang Ling isn't interested in that. Fang Xing was still bewildered in his heart. It was one thing to apologize, but why did he have to hit her? Shi Shuai could only withdraw his hand in embarrassment. Scratching his head, he looked at Wang Ling. Next time, classmate Wang Ling, tell me what you want to eat, I'll treat you. Without saying anything else, Wang Ling nodded at Shi Shuai and the matter was settled. On the side, Teacher Yi snickered inwardly. Whatever conflict there was, it was always good to resolve it internally. They were all classmates in the same school, so there was no need to make things so tense at all. Teacher Yi had originally planned to have a heart-to-heart talk with Wang Ling and Shi Shuai after the sports meet to resolve the conflict. But now, it looked like he had been worrying too much. This cohort of students didn't just improve their physical fitness, they also learned self-reflection and self-growth. Teacher Yi felt that this was probably the cohort of students he had never taught before. But the school's consensus now was that this cohort was the worst, so Teacher Yi couldn't let it slip, and could only be secretly happy in his heart. Taking the medicine ball from Shi Shuai, Wang Ling sighed sadly. He had tested himself in the medicine ball event before, but his strength hadn't been very stable. Even with the Dao Talisman seal in place, it was still difficult to throw the ball. He felt that it was much more difficult than a relay run on a sword. Holding the ball in his hand, Wang Ling stood on the throwing line as cheers came from the sidelines. Go, classmate Wang Ling. Lotus Sun and Feather Lin took the lead in shouting. With Lotus Sun's support, many boys from other classes also joined in. Go, Wang Ling. Go, classmate Wang Ling. Beat Shi Shuai 73 meters, I believe you can do it. Wang Ling took a deep breath and got ready to throw. The moment he threw the ball, he suddenly realized that something wasn't right. It seemed that he had used too much force. In the end, Wang Ling's score was 65 meters. Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the ball came back. Good job, classmate Wang Ling. Teacher Yi was overjoyed. This was already a pretty good result. In the crowd of onlookers, Dopigua asked in a low voice, Strange, did you see the parabola of the medicine ball just now? Super Chin shrugged. I didn't pay much attention. When I came back to my senses, Wang Ling's ball had already fallen. Dopigua, then maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me? After confirming the result, the old referee pushed up his glasses. No problem, mark down the result. 65 meters. When Wang Ling had thrown the medicine ball, Fang Xing had been drinking water. In the end, when he saw Wang Ling throw the ball, he almost spat out water. What the hell, no problem, it was normal for other people not to see it, but Fang Xing had seen it clearly. If he hadn't seen it wrong. Just now, Wang Ling's medicine ball had probably circled the earth once. A few minutes before Wang Ling had thrown the ball, on a beach in Mishio Nation, the sun shone down on the golden sand. On a recliner on the beach lay a blonde, blue-eyed foreign man with big chest muscles. The man was only wearing a pair of beach shorts, and on either side of him stood a row of beautiful assistants. No news, from Sister Hai, Heng? The man rested his head on his pillow and spoke in Mandarin with a crooked Chinese accent as he took a sip of juice. This was juice made from fried cassiope spirit fruit imported from abroad, and was sold for 1,000 immortal gold bars per drop. Edmark will be there. President Bai is still looking for information, but he should be here soon. A female assistant put down the phone in her hand and bent over to whisper in his ear. Our night chief is determined to get Beast King's remains. Anyone who stands in our way will be cleaned up. The lips of this big-chested foreigner curled up into a smile. We've been planning this since last year, and we've set up a lot of spies in Huaxiao Nation in order to take Beast King's remains for ourselves. As long as we control Beast King's remains, we'll have the whole world. Mr. Edmark, this subordinate is slow-witted, the female assistant frowned, completely unable to understand what it meant to have the whole world. This Mr. Edmark smiled and spoke telepathically only to the female assistant. You've been by our side for many years, and you've gone through fire and water. There's no harm in telling you. This is no longer a secret among Night Chief's higher-ups. Do you know why we're fighting over Beast King's remains? The female assistant also replied telepathically, is it for extinct materials? No, no, no. Chapter 564. Level 13? The female assistant's face turned pale with shock. She had been with President Edmark for decades, and had seen her fair share of storms and experiences, but she had never heard of a level 13 spell. So far, the supreme legendary secret spells she had heard of were only level 10. A level 10 spell was already a transcendent spell, and the power of a level 10 spell was no less than 100 spirit power nuclear bombs. A level 13 spell, a spell that crossed 3 levels of level 10? How terrifying was that? The female assistant couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat, and she didn't dare think any further. Do you think Xiao has been doing everything in its power to prevent the invasion of the perverted nation all these years for the sake of God? Holding a glass of juice, President Edmark couldn't help laughing. Of course, it's indeed very important to protect the extinct resources. But more importantly, they also want to obtain the level 13 transcendent spell hidden in Beast King's remains. Last year, our spies dispatched by Night Chief obtained this information from Huaxiu's military. The female assistant was stunned once again. Despite Xiu's strict defense all these years, they had still been able to plant spies inside, and they had even obtained information from the military. In terms of secrecy, it went without saying that the level 13 spell in Beast King's remains was highly confidential. But how on earth had they obtained this information? Could it be that Night Chief's spies had also been planted inside Huaxiu? The female assistant cupped her chin in her hand as she pondered. Previously, we've seen a rank 10 spell, and its power is already extraordinary. According to the inference of the Master of Spellcasters, the destructive power of a grade 11 spell can bring disaster to an entire planet, a grade 12 spell can annihilate a planet, and a grade 13 spell can completely erase an entire planet from the universe. President Edmark seemed to think of something, and the corners of his lips curled up into a strange smile. Now, you should know how important this level 13 spell is to us, right? As long as we control it, we can threaten the whole world. We've been planning this for a long time, and President Bai's investigation should be over soon. The female assistant turned pale with shock, then knelt down on one knee. She lowered her head and had an extremely humble expression on her face. President Edmark actually shared such an important secret with this stupid subordinate. This subordinate has nothing to repay you with. These are all trivial matters. President Edmark waved his hand and smiled, as if everything was under his control. Who do you think I am? I'm one of the 6 great generals of Night Chief, and the hand of the 6 great generals. Although Bai Zhe is on equal footing with me, he doesn't have as much authority as I do. After this grand plan is successfully completed, I will think of a way to recruit Bai Zhe and have him work under me. When the female assistant heard this, the reverence on her face deepened. That's right, what kind of status and strength did President Edmark have? When Night Chief was first established, the earliest group of elders were the first subordinates of the current leader of Night Chief, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor. Night Chief didn't have a deputy leader, but Edmark's status was already no different from that of a deputy leader. Apart from Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, everyone in Night Chief had to show President Edmark some respect, and the other 5 generals were no exception. And among the 6 generals, President Bai's position was actually the lowest. Our 6 generals work together on the surface, but behind the scenes, we pretend to be brothers. In fact, there were already people colluding in the dark, so the truth of this big plan was very important to me. I've planted 70% of the people in the entire plan. I know all the details of the plan. This is our advantage, and we must make good use of it. President Edmark said. He put down the juice and reached out to stroke the female assistant's face with a thick, broad palm. He looked at the rest of the attendants on the side. All of you are dismissed, swish. With a swish, the attendants scattered in all directions. Only President Edmark and his first female assistant were left on the huge golden beach. President Edmark, isn't this not very good? The female assistant's face flushed. In the next moment, President Edmark stood up. His muscles swelled as he changed once again. Thick wings and a thick and long tail stretched out from his back, and at the same time, the fur on his body grew thicker. President Edmark's body had been injected with the blood of an ancient griffin, and he was one of the few successful test subjects in the Mishio people's experiment with magical beasts back then. Ah! President Edmark is really too handsome. The female assistant was deeply intoxicated. In this state, the male hormones all over President Edmark's body surged, and she couldn't help but feel weak at the knees. The two of them were very close, and this kind of male hormone was too stimulating for the female assistant. Just as she was about to collapse, Edmark's broad palm caught her slender waist. As expected of the person who has been by my side the longest. Whether it's a man or a woman, when I'm in beast form, no one can last more than 3 seconds under my powerful hormones. President Edmark gently stroked the female assistant's face. You're so cute. Can I touch you? This subordinate is President Edmark's. President Edmark can do whatever he wants. Blushing, the female assistant turned her head away, trying hard not to meet President Edmark's gaze, and instead turned her gaze to the surging blue sea. Just as President Edmark was about to bend down and kiss her, the female assistant suddenly saw an extremely bright spot of light appear on the horizon in the distance. The female assistant rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't seeing things, and the spot of light was getting bigger and bigger. She pointed at the horizon and exclaimed, President Edmark, look! There seems to be a meteor on the horizon. A meteor? This golden beach was known as the Beach of the Sun. Because of the artificial sun, it was bright all year round, and it wasn't a good place to look at the stars. How could there be a meteor? President Edmark frowned. He was a little unhappy that the atmosphere had been interrupted, but he still followed the female assistant's gaze to the horizon. Indeed, there was a spot of light that was getting brighter and brighter. But it didn't seem to be a meteor. President Edmark opened his heavenly eye and did his best to capture the meteor's trajectory, but it was too fast. Even his dynamic vision couldn't capture it. President Edmark was alarmed. He gathered all his spirit energy in his eyes and combined it with the eagle eye of the ancient griffin bloodline, but he could only get a general idea of what was going on. But in the next moment, he realized that the meteor was actually flying toward him. There was a loud boom. The meteor smashed through his chest, leaving a huge bloody hole. Blood splattered and drenched the female assistant's snow-white face. As the female assistant screamed, President Edmark lowered his head in disbelief and looked at his chest. A medicine ball? Chapter 565. President Edmark was dead? What on earth was that sudden drop in spiritual pressure just now? Drenched in blood, the female assistant trembled helplessly on the golden beach. She hadn't clearly seen what had happened, but the instant President Edmark's chest had been pierced by an unknown object, she had felt a terrible pressure, as if the sky had collapsed and suffocated her. Although it had only been for a split second, the female assistant had felt the threat of death. Who on earth was it? Someone had actually managed to assassinate President Edmark without him noticing. What on earth was that unknown object that had pierced through President Edmark? Gritting her teeth, the female assistant got to her feet on trembling legs and carefully examined the bloody hole in President Edmark's chest. President Edmark, who had the ancient griffin bloodline, had a very strong regenerative ability. Under normal circumstances, even if his head had been cut off, he wouldn't have died immediately. But now, the bloody hole in his chest was bleeding non-stop. It was very clear that this was a wound that couldn't be healed at all. It was likely that that unknown object had a serious injury effect, and it had struck right in the heart. It could be said that this was an attack that had been carefully planned to kill without any resistance. I have to report this to Spirit Emperor as soon as possible. With trembling hands, the female assistant dialed the emergency hotline inside Night Chief. It had been less than 3 minutes since President Edmark's death. If she could make it in time, she might be able to collect the remnant of President Edmark's soul on this golden beach, but it was very strange. The female assistant realized that Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's emergency hotline was unexpectedly unanswered. In the past, such a situation would never have occurred. At the same time, a riot was taking place in a secret laboratory on the border of Mishio Nation. Spirit Emperor has been assassinated. Alert! Alert! Level 1 alert, several Night Chief disciples shouted in alarm. A man with waist-length black hair and a face like a vampire's was half-kneeling on the ground with a pained expression on his face as he gasped in pain. This pained man was none other than Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, whom President Edmark had mentioned earlier. All of this had happened too suddenly. Just now, an unknown object had smashed through the 81 true immortal barriers outside the laboratory, smashed the impregnable barrier outside the laboratory, and took away one of Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's arms. Damn it! Who is it? How dare you assassinate me so brazenly? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor flew into a rage. His entire right shoulder and arm had been crippled, and the injury could not be healed. The unknown object that had smashed him into this state clearly had a heavy injury effect. To be able to injure him to such an extent. This person's strength was extremely terrifying. Regardless of whether it was a Dharma treasure or a Dharma technique, to be able to cause such a degree of injury, this person's strength was definitely above that of a true immortal. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor frowned deeply. He could only think of one possibility. Firstly, this person was definitely an immortal venerable. Second, this person was very likely the legendary immortal Jin Yuan. In today's world, all countries abided by the International True Immortal Convention. Furthermore, every year, the heads of state would conduct random checks on each other to rule out the possibility of a venerated immortal. So the possibility that this sneak attacker was that immortal Jin Yuan was very high. But the question was, how had Night Chief been targeted by such a big shot? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's imagination ran wild. This matter must be thoroughly investigated immediately. He had to find out the truth. Sir Spirit Elder. There's a phone call. At this moment, one of the disciples suddenly said. I don't have time to answer it now. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor clenched his teeth, then exhaled a breath of cold air and froze his arm on the ground. That strange magic artifact just now had a serious injury effect, which prevented the wound from healing. Get me some anti-serious injury medicine right away. My lord. This is an urgent internal call. It's from President Edmark's first assistant, Judy. The follower said again. I said I'm busy, didn't you hear me? One more word of nonsense and this seat will immediately crush your head. Because he had lost an arm, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was in a very bad mood. Edmark is getting more and more outrageous. Tell him to call me personally. The disciples, in number 60 High's stadium. 65 meters is already pretty good, isn't it? Dopey Guo couldn't help exclaiming in admiration. I didn't expect Wang Ling to be so amazing. You look so skinny, but you still have something in you. I've never felt that Wang Ling was weak, alright? Super Chen sked. To be honest, I think Wang Ling can hide his strength. Unfortunately, Wang Ling's performance is too stable each time, and his exam scores are always in the middle of the class. Teacher Pan can't say much. Speaking up to this point, Super Chen couldn't help spreading his hands. But because Wang Ling's performance had always been very stable, Super Chen had the misconception that Wang Ling might be at this middle level. No matter how strong a big shot was, after going through so many exams, he would eventually give himself away. Furthermore, number 60 High's teachers never gave out test papers in a conventional way. It was much more difficult to predict the average score of the exam questions before the exam, who would be so bored as to be a pain in the ass. Thus, Super Chen's original idea that Wang Ling was a hidden big shot was dispelled. The third person to take the test was Fang Xing. When he took the medicine ball from Wang Ling, Fang Xing felt that it felt sticky, and from the color, it seemed to be a little different, but the medicine ball used in the competition was red to begin with. Furthermore, there were some grains of sand stuck to it, so the subtle difference in color couldn't be seen at all if one didn't look carefully. Wait a minute. This wasn't blood, was it? Fang Xing broke out in a sweat. Wang Ling's medicine ball had circled the earth just now. Who knew if he had accidentally hit something? He sniffed the blood on the medicine ball, but didn't think it was human blood. Fang Xing sighed. He decided to stand next to the medicine ball and recite the rebirth mantra later. No matter what it wasn't good to accidentally hurt a small animal. When Fang Xing threw the ball, a young referee suddenly said, "Captain, don't you feel that the color of this medicine ball is a little different from before? It seems a lot brighter." "Just your imagination." The old referee said, "Have you heard the nursery rhyme, 'I found a penny on the side of the road'?" The young referee was blank. Yes, the old referee, this nursery rhyme praises the spirit of not pocketing the money one finds. When you listened to this nursery rhyme when you were little, and every time you found money, you would hand it over to the police uncle. Don't you feel that the red scarf on your chest is a lot brighter? You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.